Welcome to the Bloody Disgusting Network. The ensuing show will change, transform, and otherwise alter you. Good luck.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of oh.
Greetings, constant listeners, and welcome to another episode of the Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast. I am your host, Jenn the Rage Adams, and my nickname is particularly apt today because we are talking about some feminine rage in this episode. We are continuing our coverage of King's fourth collection of novellas, his ninth collection of short fiction, because as we learned in our Kingies episode, there is no difference, and nobody really knows the difference between a short story and a novella and a 1,000-page novel. So we're going to call this one a novella collection. But regardless of the classification, we are venturing into some pitch black subject matter with full dark, no stars. We have already at this point posted our episode on the first novella in the collection, which is 1922. So make sure to check that out if you have not already. And today we are buckling our seatbelts and gassing up to talk about Big Driver. That's all my car sounds. All right. But I'm not alone. Joining me in this weird old cab are a couple of losers holding the map and making sure I don't miss the exit. Justin, say hello and tell us, do you like to drive?
Hey, this is Justin Gerber, and I have no regrets about getting rid of my car living in the city, but I do miss, the decade plus of kind of just deciding to go for a drive and listen to music and roll the windows down. I really do miss that. It's not the same. I mean, I love walking around the city, listening to music, going on the train, but nothing like, pumping those tunes, throwing those shades on and, throwing your worries away. Throw them out the car window, as it were. So I do miss driving for sure. You
miss life being a highway?
I do. You know what? I drove it all night long for as long as I could,
Well, speaking of tunes, in the passenger seat, in charge of the radio, holding the box of mixtapes, Randall, say hello and tell us, do you like to drive?
Hey, it's Rockin' Ramona, and I love to drive. I almost need to drive because I get really bad car sickness, which is something that didn't afflict me until I got older. When I was a kid, I used to always read in the back of my parents' car. I read the majority of King books, probably while sitting in, my parents' minivan. And now the thought of reading in a car makes me vomit just sitting here. Really? So I joke that there should be a feature on Uber where you can just drive the car for them, because especially in Ubers, I tend to get really car sick. So yes, I love to drive. I used to have to make a 10-hour commute to college when I was younger, and I wouldn't split it up. I'd do it all in one day because, there was something about throwing my cares out the window, as Justin said, and riding it like a highway all night long. So, so I'm a big driver, I guess you could say. Yeah. But not in the way of this story.
Yeah.
No, like a regular big driver,
I'm a well-adjusted, respectful driver.
Yes. A driver that is always respectful of women. Yes. I love to drive, but I also I have a love-hate relationship with it because in Nashville, it's a driving town. Our public transportation sucks. And so I have to drive all the time. And right now, since I'm going to the office, I'm driving 3 hours a day. So that's super fun.
3 hours a day? How long is your commute to and from?
It's about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour and a half, give or take traffic. So,
wow.
Because we moved in the pandemic when we were all remote, and that's a whole nother rant about me having to go to the office. But I do remember that was one of in the early pandemic days, I just wanted to get out of the house and drive. I just needed to be going somewhere. And I think I even popped into a couple of Halloweenies Friday night things in my car because I'd just been driving around on Friday night, going to the grocery, just kind of getting away.
Eating your Reese's peanut butter cup, right?
Eating my Reese's peanut butter cups.
I remember
yes.
your little, your.
Oh, yeah.
Jen,
And my
I
ritual.
do have a serious question. This would be a pretty serious episode, but when you go to and from work, how were you getting there through like a highway?
Yes, I do go on a highway. Yes, all morning long, and sometimes, especially after the time change, all night long.
Yeah, true. In the mornings, and at night.
Yeah. Are you wondering who's going my way?
No, I assumed, assumed as much.
Hopefully none of the characters in this story.
That's exactly. Yeah. They can stay in all these cities and all of those towns. Wah, wah. We are referencing Life as a Highway because when we went to Maine, we sang that song relentlessly. And it was funny every single time. And will be until we all die. All right. Well, let's see. Before we get started, Justin just mentioned this is going to be a serious episode. And if you have read Big Driver, then you know why. So before we pull into the parking lot of the Derry Public Library, I want to give a big trigger warning. We are going to be talking about the rape revenge subgenre. We're going to be talking about a sexual assault that happens in the pages of this novella, and we are going to talk about the topic in general. Now, we're going to try to keep the conversation as light as possible, and we're going to avoid getting too personal, but we want to do the novella and the subject justice, so there are going to be some heavy themes. Please make sure to take care of yourself. And if this is not the episode for you, we completely understand. We will see you back here for our coverage of Fair Extension and A Good Marriage and a billion other sillier and much lighter episodes. So do what you need to do to take care of yourself. And with that, let's open the doors of the Derry Public Library.
Mike Hanlon, if you see...
Excuse me, sir. Do you have Prince Albert in a can? You do? Well, you better let the poor guy out.
Tell Mike Hanlon that I had to go, that I had to get cleaned up. Tell him. Tell him I'll see him tonight.
Get out! Last chance, Tosha. Get out! Get out!
Welcome to the Derry Public Library. And so I'm not going to do too much here because, Justin, I know you've given some details about the collection as a whole in our 1922 episode. So I'm not going to rehash that, except to say that Big Driver is the second novella in Full Dark, No Stars, was published in November 2010. And as I was writing this outline, I realized that I have been forgetting to ask what editions we're reading, and we've talked a little bit about our first experiences, but Randall, since you and I are not on that episode, what edition are you reading, and what was your first experience with Full Dark, No Stars?
I'm boring in just that I have the Kindle edition.
That's not boring, that's practical.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I actually have a very soft spot in my heart for this collection because I've talked about in the pod before, especially during our Under the Dome episodes, that I kind of got back into Stephen King because of my Kindle, because I got one for, I think, around 2010, somewhere around there, 2009. And the first book I got on my Kindle was Under the Dome. And because I was like, you know what? I need something for this. King has this book out. It looks fun. And that really kind of got me reading King again, especially with 1122, the kind of 1-2 punch of those. I was sort of, back in. And I remember getting this book next because I was like, well, I'm kind of on a roll. I'm going to keep reading King. And this collection had come out, relatively recently. And I read it and I was like, man, he still got it. Because I think all 4 stories are strong in their own ways. I wouldn't say it's like my favorite novella collection, but it's definitely one where it proves he's, still got the juice. So yeah, I just have a memory of like reading this on the bus to work every morning. So
wow.
That's like
Way to start your day.
Yeah, I know it's like, it is a really dark collection too, but I just, that's like this weird memory I have is being on Lakeshore Drive here in Chicago, reading Big Driver and Good Marriage and stuff like that. So yeah.
Nice.
And that was when you're driving, which made it really complicated. It's so dangerous out there in Lakeshore, the winding roads.
Look at that Big Driver. He's reading. Yeah. Well, and Justin, I don't want to make you rehash what you talked about, but for our listeners who may not have listened to that 1922 episode and are going to listen to it as soon as this one is over, what edition are you reading? And can you just give us like a Cliff's Notes of your first experience?
Yeah, Jen, what's funny, we talked all about the original cover for this novella collection with a short story, allegedly. And But I forgot to mention what edition that I was reading and had read originally. And I'll tell you what, right now, I'm reading from the first edition hardcover from 13 years ago. It's the same copy I had 13 years ago. I just picked it up again and reread it. Nice. And yeah, it's got the original cover. We talk a lot about the cover and the inspiration for the cover, with a woman kind of with her one arm extended and her hand on the side of her head. And I noticed if you look closely, though, for King's Dominion, if you look at the eye for Stephen King as a 1, and the way that she is positioned looks like a 9.
Oh.
So is that supposed to be 19tion? Is that?
I think
Look,
so.
we should take a little screen grab of that and circle it.
It's a little room 237, but I'll give it to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was thinking about that just literally 2 minutes ago.
Hey, I will believe it.
And this was the first new Stephen King book I read living in Chicago. So it's very strange. We're finally, like I mentioned in the 1922 episode, we are finally hitting Justo in the City.
Yeah.
Oh,
King.
just
Very strange. Really catching up.
Well, and I have my first edition also, although it is just a gray book because my beautiful book jacket is gone somewhere in oblivion. So
do you mourn it with one arm outstretched and the other touching your head?
I do, yeah.
Like
Sometimes I do, and it looks a little bit like a 19.
Yeah.
But I also I don't like dust jackets, so I don't really care.
Oh, hot take over here.
I know, yeah.
You're
They're
out?
just like, I always take them off. And
Right now we're going to get a bunch of 1-star reviews.
I know.
When I'm reading the book,
anti-dust jacket.
when I'm reading the book, the dust jacket's off because I don't want to get torn, and it's always like angled a weird way when you open the book.
Yeah.
But it slips right back in. Undone.
always forget.
Right back on the bookshelf.
I like the I don't know, blandness of my shelf or something. I don't know. I'm weird. I feel like it looks like
for
it's
those of you out there like the blandness of
the
shelves.
blandness of bookshelves.
Good.
Yes,
Sounds good. You like the color code all black apparently.
Yeah, well, and it's like, I don't know, all the Mercedes trilogy or the Hodges trilogies are red, and so there's a lot of red, black, and gray on my bookshelf, which
I believe it
is never bad, you know. And I'm reading, and so I did listen to the audiobook for this, which I think is very good. There are some different voices So we've got. Sorry, I'm stumbling all over words. So 1922 and Fair Extension are read by Craig Wasson, and Big Driver and A Good Marriage are read by Jessica Hecht. And I'm not really familiar with her, but she did a great job. She was fun.
I know Jessica Hecht. If one of you wants to double check, I'm pretty sure that she is Ross's ex-wife's girlfriend on Friends, and it was also on Breaking Bad. Am I right?
Oh,
yes.
my
Am I dead
gosh.
wrong?
She's Walt's ex on Breaking Bad. She's in a gazillion things.
Yes, she's had a good career.
Oh, I'm putting the voice together. Yes, because I'll save it for Fair Extension, but she has kind of a high lilting voice for Darcy in A Good Marriage.
Craig Wasson, for all you Halloweenies fans out there, he's the psychiatrist in Nightmare on Elm Street 3: Dream Warriors. He's also the younger character. The younger main character in Peter Straub's Ghost Story movie, which we discussed on this podcast.
Wow. We did.
And he's the star of Brian De Palma's Body Double. So there you go.
Ooh.
Craig Wasson.
He's
had an 80s moment and disappeared.
Yeah, speaking of bland, dreamy doctors in Nightmare on Elm Street.
I think he's like 32 in that movie. I always thought he was 50 when I was a kid. Now I'm
exactly, yeah.
a decade older than him.
Yeah, he always wanted to be an old professor. He was like born with elbow patches or something.
He did it.
All right. Well, so those are our additions. And Justin, would you mind reading the blurb on your copy of Big Driver?
I shall. In Big Driver, a cozy mystery writer named Tess encounters a stranger along a back road in Massachusetts when she takes a shortcut home after a book club engagement. Violated and left for dead, Tess plots a revenge that will bring her face to face with another stranger, the one inside herself.
I think that's pretty succinct, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, right on. Considering there are 3 other novellas that they have to, sell us on. And
I've heard less true to form descriptions on other Stephen King books. This isn't the road work one, you know.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
There's no guy with like a gun on a main road somewhere, you know.
Yeah. Excitement abounds in this nonstop thrill ride road work. Yeah. Julia somewhere is out here like cursing us because she loves road work. All right. And so as we were preparing for this, Justin, you found a Simon & Schuster video with King answering reader-submitted questions. And they kind of bring up, there's not a ton out there about this book, or at least this novella itself, that doesn't have to do with the movie adaptation, which we're going to talk about later. But I wanted to kind of use these questions to kind of talk about the book in general. So Justin, how about I read the question and you hit us with an answer?
Sure.
Does that sound good?
Sure.
Cool.
I'll just say, again, Bryant Burnett, who's our kind of archivist,
yes.
he pointed me in the right direction, because I think, Randall, you mentioned this Under the Dome, and I mentioned it again for The Full Dark No Stars. There was just not a lot of publicity for this book, but then we, assumed that's probably because he was coming off of Under the Dome and about to go into 1122. Both.
It really varies from book to book. Under the Dome, he did a
does.
shitload of press, and then there's some where I literally can't find like a single
And this is
interview for some
definitely
of
an
his
example.
books.
But there's a great 20-minute Q&A that King did for Simon & Schuster back in 2010. Again, Bryant pointed me in the right direction.
Thank you.
I went ahead and
Bryant.
transcribed it. I had to slow it down to like 0.25, and King sounded like he sounded probably talking in 1985. But I was able to transcribe it, so thank you very much.
Oh, wow.
To me.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you very much. That's awesome. Yeah, this would be a hard one to market, I imagine, too. 'Cause
It is, but I will tell you right now, I was so happy because I could not find anything anywhere, and I found a good, at least half a page to a page for every story here, except for
nice.
A Good Marriage. So bear with us on that episode in the future. So, Jen, do you want me to do the Q&A that King does here, and then you're going to give us your
Yeah, if
Your
you
own
want
personal
to.
prompt? Yeah.
Well, I've
Okay.
kind of broken it up a little bit. So here,
Yeah.
the first question is, in Big Driver, a woman takes a shortcut that puts her life in a desperate situation. In your personal life, Justin as Stephen King, do you like to travel down strange roads, or do you stick to the main highways?
Okay, so I will not be doing Mike's. I will not be stepping on the
patented,
territory.
King.
The David Lynchian King. I will not do it. So I'll burn through this. We got a lot to read. No, I'm a main highway guy. I'm a turnpike guy and always have been. I like the way I get to know places. When you want to go down strange roads and shortcuts, that's my wife you're talking about. I wrote a story years ago called Mrs. Todd's Shortcut about a woman who was crazy for a shortcut. And that was actually based on my wife, who's always looking for a way that will shave 2 or 3 minutes off a trip between point A and point B. A lot of times what happens is she ends up spending more time on the road, but she always has an interesting time. One of the things I wanted to do in Big Driver was to play with a lot of the conventions of the horror story. And one of those things is always with a kid either winding up in a deserted summer camp, or one of the kids in a minivan who will say, "Hey, this way looks 12 miles shorter on the map." And then they're going to meet Jason or Leatherface or somebody of that ilk.
Somebody big and
Somebody
driving,
big.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he mentioned Mrs. Todd's Shortcut, which, I mean, we're all well aware of how obsessed I am with that story. And I had a sweet little moment when somebody in my office actually knew it today, and I wasn't just the random weirdo in the corner talking about Stephen King. There was another one of us. But Randall, do you like Mrs. Todd's Shortcut?
I love it. Yeah,
so
I know. I rated it really high. I think in our Skeleton Crew episode, maybe the highest of everyone. It's just one of those little gems that feels very distinct in the realm of King. Like it lives in this eerie little space between wonder and dread, and yeah. So big fan of that story. It's one of the ones that comes immediately to mind when people ask what my favorite King short stories are.
Oh, that makes me happy. Justin, how about you? Do you like it? Or are you going to
Love-
break my heart?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I love all my Dark Tower adjacent stories, and this does take place in another When and Where, in my opinion. And I think I rated that extremely high. I'm not sure how high for our Skeleton Crew episode, but I've always loved this one. And I've always been stunned how, and maybe it's a good thing, but it has not been adapted. And I've always wondered how close it came to happening. I'm sure it's come close at some point, right?
Yeah. There's part of me that really, really wants an adaptation, and part of me that's really nervous about that and what it would
Yeah, I
have to
feel
be.
like I don't know if it would. I feel like you would need a real fucking visionary to justify what's on the page. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
It might
And
become
somebody that
too
would leave it
whimsical because
alone.
there's a darkness
Yeah.
to the whimsy of that short
Yeah.
story that might get hard. Might be hard to translate that.
Like Ari Aster might be good at that after seeing Beau is Afraid. And,
Oh, yeah? Oh, I still haven't seen that.
and old Tim Burton maybe.
yeah.
Old Tim Burton.
I just
Yeah,
read
exactly.
a really funny story about Beetlejuice today that I'm not going to bring up because it's
Oh.
about politics.
I know what it was because I had to edit a story about it earlier. So.
Can't
made
wait
me
to hear all
smile.
about it later.
Oh my gosh, so funny. Okay, well, and so I consider Mrs. Todd Shortgut to be one of the Eclipse stories, which is kind of how I refer to like Stephen King's more female-centric stories. So do we consider Big Driver an Eclipse novella?
I do. Yeah. I think because, and I hadn't really thought of it that way until I saw your question, but at least in the sense that the Eclipse stories are kind of all about women reckoning with their own subjugation. Like, it definitely falls under that. And obviously, pushing against it, fighting against it. To me, it was very evocative of Gerald's Game in terms of, not just, I think the grander situation, but also how her like conflicting feelings manifested as different figures in her life, including fictional ones like Doreen, but also the cat, and then the GPS. So I think in that sense, it had she reminded me a lot of Jessie, which was something I don't think I would have thought of had I not you not like sent that question along. So
yeah. Well, and I definitely want to talk when we get into heroes and villains. I want to talk about Tess and kind of maybe how she is like Ophelia Todd and Jessie. I hadn't really thought about her in connection with Jessie, but I think there's a lot of connective tissue there. But yeah, I definitely. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this. It's funny, Jen, because Ashley discussed about how 1922 could be kind of a funhouse mirror to Dolores Claiborne with the certain events that happened in both of those books.
Yeah.
But this is a good point about the Eclipse novella. I'd include Rose Madder. I would include Rose Madder in that as well. But the thing is about those that those stories ultimately, despite all the nightmares that those people go through, they do have somewhat triumphant endings when it comes to who perishes. And while Big Driver does have Tess winning the day ultimately, my issue is it does feel like she does so with a bit of a narrative cheat, while the others are a little bit cleaner. Not to jump ahead, but I just didn't find a lot of story value in having it turn out that the brother was definitively an accessory in some way.
I have thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think
talk about later. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, this might just be a precursor to what we're going to be talking about later, and obviously, I think killing herself would have been too dark, even though this is in a collection called Full Dark. But I just feel like the complicated guilt mixing in with the true justice would have been a little bit more compelling narratively. But
there's a lot of wiggling going on in the last 50 pages. I have a lot of thoughts about it, so we'll get there.
I'm interested to talk about that because I have a lot of feelings about this story, and I don't always I don't know. I haven't really thought too much about the actual structure of it, so I'm really interested to talk about that when we get into. I have a question that I think is going to lead us into that. All right, so Randall, how would you feel about reading one of King's answers to a question? Do you see where I am in the outline?
Oh, yes.
Sweet.
I love to read.
All right. Okay, so a woman from Wichita, Kansas asked, how are you able to hit the nail on the head so well by identifying female behavior in exigent circumstances, as in Big Driver?
This question reminds me of that bit in As Good as It Gets with Jack Nicholson. Where they're like, how do you write female characters so well? And he says, I take away reason and accountability. Sorry. Okay. King says, I was raised by a single mom, so I had that basis for observation for the early years in my life. I married a woman who has 5 sisters, and they're all strong personalities, so I had that to draw on. I have assistants who run my life, my office, and they're strong female personalities as well. But really, I think that for a writer, the act of imagination has to do with any number of things, and one thing is trying to be able to put on the dress if you're a man, and put on the pants if you're a woman, speaking metaphorically now. But I read something in my first year of college that made a huge impression on me. It's a book by Leslie Fielder called Love and Death and the American Novel. And Fielder said American writers don't understand women. Writers from Hemingway to Faulkner, right up through Joseph Heller with Catch-22, don't deal well with women. He said that for most American male writers, women are either zeros or destroyers, and there's nothing in between. And I thought to myself, well, if I ever make my living doing this, I'm going to try to do better by women. So that's been something I try to do in the fiction. I have characters that are pretty dark that are female, Annie Wilkes and Misery for one, but I think that across the board, I try to treat women as fairly with as much complexity and texture as I possibly can.
So my question here is, one, just general thoughts on that, but what do we think of King's treatment of female characters in general? I know that's a larger question, but Justin, what do you think?
Well, thank you for asking me this question.
Yes, of course.
I think the people
I
have been
feel like
dying
just
to
need
know
a man to
from
explain
me.
it to us,
I know. I'm so happy to be able to do it. Well, I think if we're going to do like the broad question is a broad answer, right? I think that when you write as many stories, as many novels, novellas, short stories as King, there will inevitably be misses. We've talked about how, especially like the mother characters in a lot of his stories, tend to be over the top, overbearing, as we've discussed a few times over the years.
Yeah.
But I do think when he does focus on a woman as a main protagonist in his novels specifically, that the stories much more often than not work for me. I mean, you go back to Carrie, his first book, Gerald's Game, Dolores Claiborne, Rose Madder, Lisi's story for me. Randall, we know how you feel about Lisi's story. But just to name a few, I think that when he does put the time in, it works. But it kind of goes against what he said about how there's the extremes, right? And I think he mentions in this quote here. Yeah, zeros are destroyers. There's nothing in between. You could argue that if he does have male protagonists, sometimes the women in the stories do suffer for that, and that would contradict that belief into what he thinks he's doing. Do you know what I mean by that?
I do.
He's not going to bat 100, you know?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. But I think, Randall, what do you think?
I mean, I don't want to act like I'm an authority when it comes to the right way to write female characters.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think that's something I've really, the older I get, the more I, don't try to pretend I have the answers to these kinds of things. I think he really, really wants to be able to write compelling female characters. I think he sees it as a challenge. I assume that's partly why he wrote the Eclipse novels, to push himself and tell new stories. And he's doing it now, I think, too, with like gay characters and characters of color. I think he's trying to push himself, and there's an admirable quality to that. But he's written plenty of female characters that I find compelling. He's also written female characters I find kind of paper thin because they clearly exist. I think about Bag of Bones, like that character really only exists to serve the male gaze, and we talked about that quite a bit in our episode. But, I mean, I agree with you, Justin. I think several of my favorite King books have, female protagonists. Not Lisi's story. But, hey, my problems with Lisi have nothing to do with her being a woman.
There you go.
Yeah, I agree with you both. I think like the batting average is really high on his female characters, but I think, with just the sheer amount of characters he has, you're not going to get them all right. But what I think is interesting is I don't necessarily know if I think he especially writes female characters especially well. That's two especiallys in one sentence for you. I think he just writes characters really well, and he treats his female characters just like he treats his male characters, and I think like because he's got a lot of male characters that I think are great, and he's got some that I don't think are that interesting. And that's really more what I want. I want him to not necessarily go out of his way to write female characters better, but just to see them as characters, regardless of like how they identify. Yeah. And I also it might feel like I'm trying to like gotcha with some of these questions. I swear I'm just answering after because I'm reading the question. So, but that's the thing. Like, I feel like I wish more men would talk about this kind of stuff, and I wish more men would write female characters, and it wouldn't be like such a specialty kind of thing, Yeah. So my next question is, what do you think about King's metaphor and his ability to kind of put the pants on of his various characters? And I realize that may be not the most up-to-date metaphor. Like if you said it this way, or if you said it today, maybe a little more, not so gender essentialist. But what do we think about that element of his answer?
I mean, he really, when he does write, like when he does build a story around a woman, he does tend to wade into like very deep waters. Like he doesn't, like you think about Gerald's Game, you think about Dolores Claiborne or Rose Madder. These are women who have gone through some of the most horrific experiences you can go through, specifically as a woman. And the fact that he's writing it, I think, is very bold. It probably wouldn't be something I would do. But I'm not criticizing those stories, and I think he takes them very seriously, and I think he really respects, the stuff that he's talking about. I think sometimes he may realize he's out of his depth, and you can see that in the text. There's a moment in Big Driver that I want to talk about where that happens, but yeah.
Yeah. Justin, what do you think?
I think the other key part of that answer is the fact that he name checks the fact that he's got a lot of women in his life. And I do think that, look, when it comes to writing about women, breaking news, there's only so much, a man can understand about what happens in a woman's mind and vice versa.
Yeah.
But I think having another, well, bold statement for me, but I think having another writer living with him and more specifically married to him and Tabby can only help. I think he's putting those metaphorical jeans on one leg at a time. I hope that he does ask Tabby, do these fit? And hopefully she's honest with him.
She helps him
helps him zip it up, not to get too pound cakey with it.
Ooh.
But a common knock over the last, 10, 20, 30 years maybe is that King doesn't necessarily have an editor, right? That's always a joke. But I do feel like Tabby reads these and is honest with them, right? I do feel like that still happens. So.
Oh, yeah. If she was going to divorce him over Mambo number 5, she's going to tell him when he's not writing about periods, right? And I do remember the first, just what we read about Carrie, and she's saying, I'll help you with the girl stuff. And I think she has been doing that. And I think it's also kind of a testament to him as a writer that I think he's receptive to that feedback, and I think, there's the rumor that she actually wrote Gerald's Game, which I don't believe, but, well, let's talk.
I don't know if I believe that either. Too much King in there.
Yeah, exactly. She may have had a hand in it, and she may have helped him. But I think she does that with all of them,
Yeah, the gloved hand, maybe.
Oh. Ooh.
Each.
Ugh. I thought we were talking about a loofah hand at first, and then I remembered what Gerald's Game is about.
Yeah,
it's like,
here we go.
Yep,
Loofah
that's a different kind of thing. Okay, well, so one more question about this: do we find Tess to be an authentic character? And I will say so. I do. Yeah, I find I'll fall on the sword first for this one. I do. I find she's got her moments, but I think the way she kind of works through some of this, and just the thought processes and kind of how she processes a lot of what has happened in the story, I find very authentic for the most part.
Yeah, I think in fiction you've got to hold realism as being the end-all be-all as to whether or not I'll find something satisfying. You have to hold it at arm's length because, most people, no matter how good or evil they are boring. Having said that, I do believe that how Tess behaves is how a person could react to the scenario she finds herself in. And now, again, authenticity in storytelling can be a detriment. And again, I believe in the revelations relating to the true Big Driver, the brother. But do they satisfy story-wise? Well, we'll discuss that later on. But I have to keep teasing that. So
Justin's got some big thoughts for Big Driver.
I got some big thoughts for Big Driver. Yeah, I do.
Randall, how about you?
Yeah, I like Tess. I think the journey feels authentic to me. I think the things that she's struggling with feel very, I think, if I zoom out far enough, I can relate to certain aspects of the idea of a new you emerging after a traumatic event, one that scares you, one that you don't know if you want, but that feels inevitable in its way. And then also, the question of what is it? How does it phrase exactly? It's like, what does it do for me, right? What's in it for me?
Yeah.
Is a very, very compelling question that I think drives a lot of this story. And we'll talk more about that. So I think the very fact that he asks a question like that and allows the character to sit in that question is bold and authentic in its own way, because there's a selfishness inherent to that. And I think the fact that he allows the character to go there is a testament to, I think, the authenticity he was trying to achieve here.
Yeah.
Testament.
Ah, nice. Yeah, and I think we're going to talk about the subgenre that the story falls in, but it's not known for being the most realistic subgenre. There's an element of wish fulfillment to it. So yeah, I think as far as what actually happens in the story, I think what I see inside her head feels real to me. And that's, I think, what I like most about this story. Well, we've got one more question from a reader from that interview with Simon & Schuster. So Justo asked Stephen King, as a Chicopee, Massachusetts native, I was excited when I started reading Big Driver. How did you pick it? I'm assuming this Chicopee native is referring to the town.
Yes, yeah. And this is King. King said, I drove through it. I stopped at the rest area, and there was a woman who had a flat tire, and I was going to ask the lady if she wanted help changing her tire. There was a truck driver, and he said, quote, nah, buddy, don't worry about it. I got this, end quote. But that sort of lingered in my mind. And later when I wrote the story, I thought this is the perfect area. I love central and western Massachusetts because when people speak about Massachusetts, they think about Boston, they think about Cape Cod. But there's this huge area of Massachusetts that's kind of wooden and suburban.
Nice. So when I heard this, and when I'm reading the story, and I've got a little bit of room 217 here, it reminds me of the story Rest Stop in Just After Sunset. So I want to ask a little bit, because I believe neither of you were on the Just After Sunset episode, right? So I want to ask, on that episode, we were not really thrilled with Rest Stop. It ranked near the bottom of our rankings. So one, do you two like that story? And were you frustrated with this story in the same way, or do you see this as a more successful take on similar themes? So Randall.
If you remember on the Kingies, I said it was my
That's
least favorite
right.
short
That's
story.
right.
We weren't high.
I'm not a fan of that one. I think I think Big Driver is much more successful. Rest Stop feels like scribbles on a napkin. It's weird. It's unformed. I can see like the vague sketch of what he was trying to do there, but feels like like a half draft. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's much more successful because, Tess refers to herself as the quote unquote courageous woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
At times. But she's not really detaching and becoming another character like in, spoiler alert for older books that we've covered, The Dark Half, Secret Window, Secret Garden, or like I said, Rest Stop. I don't think Big Driver is as simplistic as those stories. Though I do like The Dark Half. I do enjoy that book.
Yeah, I do.
I think that this story explores a psychological breakdown, not a psychological break, if that makes sense. I should have run that by my girlfriend, but oh well.
Yeah.
There you go. I think that checks out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about the process, right? Like the transformation process of going from being one person to someone who is forever changed.
It's not just all of a sudden I'm Mr. Hyde, right? It's not
right. Yeah.
Well, and I think one of the things that rubs me the wrong way about Rest Stop is there's a callousness to what happens in the Rest Stop that I kind of feel in that story. Like the writer is the main character in that story, not the person who is being attacked and assaulted. And, I don't think King is necessarily asking us to pity this character in the story, but that to me is not who my empathy is going to. And I feel like that is what the story is about. And so when I think about kind of Big Driver, it almost feels like King looking at what may have happened, like once he drove past, or if he hadn't stopped, or like, this is the rest of that story, or this is the larger picture in that story. And that's why I think I like Big Driver a lot better. Well, let's mosey on down the Life as a Highway road to a town we call Structure and Format.
Look at me. Look at me, teacher.
How many people are in this town?
How
What's the
many
population
people
of Structure
are
and
in
Format?
this town? I don't know.
It's just us.
It's 19, baby.
Oh yeah.
Hey,
Like the
I'll be
cover
right
of
back.
Full Dark No Stars tells us, 19.
Exactly. They're all just in that 19 position. So structure and format, there's not a whole lot really to talk about the actual structure and format of this story, but I do want to talk about the subgenre, which is rape revenge, because if I'm really thinking of King's catalog, this is really like the big, in quotation marks, rape revenge story that he's written, and I'm kind of struggling to think of any others that he has written. Can y'all think of any offhand? I mean, some of the Eclipse ones I think technically would count, but I think there's a little bit more than just an assault that they might be getting revenge for.
Especially on the person, right? This isn't like Dolores Claiborne in that case. And Gerald's Game is not direct revenge. It's more just like a reclamation. And
I'm sure there are. I'm just blanking.
There probably
at the
are,
moment,
yeah. Listeners, if you can think of any, and sorry, that is a question I did not send to you ahead of time, so I apologize for springing it
and
on
who
you.
knows what else happened abuse-wise in Rose Matter. It's also possible that was even mentioned in passing. So
yeah, but I think this is the only one that is like classically structured like a rape revenge. And so rape revenge is pretty much what it sounds like. A protagonist is raped. It's usually pretty graphic and upsetting. The survivor then becomes a vigilante/anti-hero as they seek out their attackers and they kill them. And I'm intentionally saying they because we know that both men and women can be victims of sexual assault. However, the rape revenge subgenre usually focuses on women, although there are movies like Deliverance that come to mind. So I am a huge fan of rape revenge. I know that probably doesn't surprise anyone who's listening or has known me for longer than 5 minutes. It is not always the easiest to watch, and I don't love every movie, but I, in general, really enjoy the subgenre when I can watch it. It was really popular in the 70s. Movies like The Virgin Spring, Last House on the Left, I Spit on Your Grave, Straw Dogs, Miss 45, and newer films like Irreversible, Revenge, MFA, Promising Young Woman, Teeth, The Perfection. So, question for you. What are your feelings about the rape revenge subgenre just in general?
Extremely hard to watch.
Yeah.
But often satisfying. I think, there's like few archetypes more reprehensible than a rapist. So, I think the movie has a built-in release valve because if you're watching it, you pretty much know that this person's going to get it in a really bad way. I just watched Miss 45 actually for the first time, which was great and, extremely upsetting. But, and then Last House on the Left, I think has always been a movie that I've really, really loved. Well, I wouldn't say loved.
Yeah.
It's a movie that's haunted me a lot. There's scenes in that movie that I think that kind of radiate a sense of pure evil. And I think I respond to it for that reason. But, it's not a movie I've run to rewatch all the time.
Yeah, that's a tricky one.
I mean, Tess watches Last House on the Left.
She does, yeah.
And I think what she says really sums up my feelings on it, right? She acknowledges that that the events of that movie do bear similarities to what happened to her. But then, quote, she was rewarded with a happy ending. The parents of the young girl murder the rapists. End quote. And that is ultimately the satisfaction I get when I do watch movies from this genre. That revenge, more often than not, will be had, and it will be sweet. Yeah. However, I think, like you said, Randall, I'm sure, Jen, I'm not sure. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's definitely a subgenre I don't find myself revisiting. Yeah. And the number of the movies that you mentioned, Jen, are really good, especially Bergman's Virgin Spring that inspired Last House on the Left. Straw Dogs. You mentioned MFA. You recommended that movie to me.
I did. Yeah, because we were talking about Promising Young Woman a while ago. And I don't think I had seen it may have been that neither of us had seen it at the time. But I remember watching MFA, and I love MFA.
I also watched that on your recommendation and quite liked it.
Yeah. Oh, yay. I'm spreading
Clint, and then also, isn't that Clint Eastwood's daughter, I believe?
I think it is, yeah. I know her last name is Eastwood.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure.
But in summation, I'll just say, ultimately, it's a little uncomfortable for me in terms of revisiting because obviously, I'm on a horror podcast and all of you have been on it several times. Like, I don't think there's really a killer doll out there, right?
Right.
But unfortunately, we do know that the predators of this story do exist out there. And we all know people who have been through variations of what Tess has been through. So the quote rape revenge moments of this story work for me. But I'm not saying, hey, September, I got to fire up Big Driver.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I mean? I'll be like, maybe it's time to reread Cujo before I reread Big Driver. Again,
so. Where's my copy of Irreversible? Let me see if I know.
That's that's a good example. See, I have not seen that. I hear it's very good, but it's very good. That looks so tough to watch.
It is.
I think Gaspar Noé is such a genius, but that movie is punishing extremely. But I will say the first 30 minutes of that movie are some of the most, I think, and that's sort of before I think the famous scene happens.
Yeah.
But when I say like I would never rewatch a lot of these movies, I've rewatched like the first 30 minutes of Irreversible multiple times because I think it's one of the most terrifying and disorienting things I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And then the movie kind of becomes terrifying in a much different way that I'm not keen to revisit that quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a really fascinating film.
Yeah, I love it. I was afraid to watch it for a long, long, long time, and then finally did, because it's in reverse, like it's played in reverse, and so I find like although they did just release a straightforward version of it, which I haven't seen because I don't need that. But
is it just called Reversible?
It's called Reversible. Yeah, yeah. It's just the mirror image of the copy.
Have you seen Climax?
No, I haven't, but I've heard it's really good.
It's not rape revenge, but it's fucking incredible.
Have not seen any Gaspar Noé movies.
Oh man,
can you believe it?
I mean,
Enfant terrible.
I want for real. Yeah, I want to recommend Irreversible to you. It's a bad boy.
It will eventually happen.
Yeah, I mean, it is not for the faint of heart. Like, it has its reputation for a reason, But I find the reverse nature of it to be actually uplifting at the end. So, yeah, I am a huge fan. I've already said I am not an expert on rape revenge, but I do tend to seek those out, and I sometimes have to gear myself up for them. I do find them triggering, and I'm not going to talk too much about this, but I am a survivor of that, so I find like a lot of catharsis in seeing like the hell yeah moments, especially Revenge. Have y'all seen Revenge, Coralie Farragut?
Yeah.
Which I love. I feel like there's a lot of Jennifers in these movies too, so I'm like, yeah, this is my movie. So I'm a big fan of them. So
I've not seen that one. It's on my list because you've recommended it.
Yeah.
It's one of the best Shudder movies.
Totally agree. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm curious, Jen, what you think about, or maybe we can save it because I see you have a question. You have like quotes about it later, but I'm curious what you think about the original Last House on the Left.
I do have some thoughts about that in just a minute because I do want to talk about that, especially since he does specifically bring it up in this, and King has had some public thoughts about that too. But I want to ask, do we think Big Driver is a successful rape revenge story?
I think it's a complex one. Go ahead, Justin.
Oh, I mean, I think it is predictable to a point. Like I said earlier, the revenge in these stories make the stories.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a difference between what happens to Tess in this versus the movies that you mentioned is that the rape, the assault in the movies is like the set piece of those movies. And they tend to go on and you see the whole event happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't really get that here. She gets knocked out, she wakes up momentarily, and then she's out again.
Mm-hmm.
It really is about everything that happens after. It's not so much really focused. Like the event is obviously it triggers, and the rest of the story doesn't happen without it. But when you think about this story, at least when I think about the story, I don't go right to her being raped.
Right.
You know? So it's a version in that way, I think.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I think what I'm going to say right now, because I feel like if I say too much, I'll be in Hook territory. I'll say that I think King kind of wants to have it both ways. And I think that could be positive. Like, I think that either benefits the story or detracts from the story, depending on how you're looking at it. And I can see both, and I'm really excited to talk about that.
Yeah, because Yes, I agree. I can see both sides of that too. Well, and before we do get into the hook, I do want to talk about Last House on the Left, because I started looking at what King has said about rape revenge, if he's talked much about it, because, he tends to recommend a lot of stuff. And he has said some stuff about both versions of The Last House on the Left. And I feel bad because I forgot to document the sources, but they were just some like listicles about King says his least favorite and favorite horror movies of forever. But he also writes about The Last House on the Left, I believe, in the updated version of either Danse Macabre or On Writing. So of the old one, this listicle said, in a ranking of his favorite films from 2009 for Entertainment Weekly, King praised director Dennis Iliad's remake of The Last House on the Left. He soundly rejected the Wes Craven original in his commentary, describing the filmmaker's controversial directorial debut as a crap fest. And then speaking,
Imagine calling of all the things to call it.
I know,
that
a
movie,
crap
calling it a crap fest. Like it's such a childish insult for a movie that I think demands a more mature response. But maybe that's kind of the point, is he doesn't want to give it that respect. I just laughed so hard when I saw that.
I know, yeah.
You're talking about one of the most evil movies ever made.
Right.
He calls it a crap fest.
Like it's Meatballs 4, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
I was literally trying to think of a good example. Meatballs 4 is fucking perfect. Starring the great Corey Feldman.
Yeah, he breaks the fourth wall at the end and says, when the girl leaves him, it says, I was in Lost Boys. I'm not kidding. Or no, I was in the Goonies. I'm not kidding. It's on YouTube. We'll talk about it later on.
I will say that Meatballs 4 was a very important cable movie for me as a boy who was discovering my sexuality.
Yeah.
Ah, interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of nudity in it.
Really?
That's all I'm going to say.
I learned a lot about myself from some USA movies. Jaws 3 was one for me, although there's
like,
not nudity in that one.
The alien subplot for Meatballs 2, I thought that's where you were going to go.
No, Meatballs 2 is the family-friendly one.
Yeah,
I mean, that could be why you were afraid of aliens, though, you know? Just formative in so many ways. Well, speaking of, I don't know.
I don't know how the hell you're going to transition out of Meatballs 4, but I wish you all the best.
No.
I'm sorry.
Well, so talking about the new version of it, I guess not a sequel, but, an updated version of an original Meatballs-esque story. So speaking about the film in his book, Danse Macabre, King heaped the film, this is the remake, with considerable praise, stating that The Last House on the Left is, quote, the best horror movie of the new century, unquote. Continuing, the world-renowned author writes, the Dennis Iliadis version is to the original what a mature artist's painting is to the drawing of a child who shows some gleams of talent. The 2009 Last House is the most brutal and uncompromising film to play American movie theaters since Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, which I want to get your thoughts on this, but I actually would say the reverse. Like, I find the original Last House on the Left to feel much more like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. And Randall, you asked how I feel about it. I like the new Last House on the Left. It's got a lot of dreamboats in it that I relate, like Spencer Treat Clark and Tony Goldwyn and Aaron Paul. Yes, a lot of people that I really
Garrett
love.
Hedlund in that too?
Who?
Is it Garrett? Why am I?
Oh, Garrett Hedlund. I think he might
Deadwood.
be.
Randall
Garrett Dillahunt.
Garrett Dillahunt. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think he's in that.
I'm not sure if he's in it. I never saw it.
And I haven't seen it in a while. I don't find it like. It didn't change my life, but I thought it was good and scary and brutal, and the microwave thing, even though it doesn't make sense. That
was a weird period, and I mean this affectionately, where, in my opinion, because I have not seen the remake. I saw the original. I thought probably good here for a little while. It turns out maybe 15 years, maybe might be long enough. But I think I thought the Crazies remake was better than Romero's movie. I thought the Hills Have Eyes remake was, if not better than, as good as Craven's The Hills Have Eyes. So it's really strange because, we're always bemoaning remakes, but interesting period there for the late aughts and early 2010s.
This is such a strange take.
I agree.
You'd think I have not heard anyone say a word about the 2009 Last House on the Left since it came out. And we run in circles where I feel like people are running out of articles to write and are just pulling the most obscure movie and saying, actually, this is a masterpiece. Right? And I'm like, well, nobody's done that with Last House on the Left 2009 yet. So this take feels very bizarre to me. And I mean, maybe it's good. I haven't seen it, but I just remember even from the horror community, people being like, this movie kind of sucks. And I think I don't know. I have such a... there are movies that just feel so one of a kind. Yeah. And, you mentioned in the notes here that there was alleged abuse of one of the actresses in the original Last House on the Left. And I didn't know that either, but I'm not surprised. Yeah. And I guess, I think that's because when, it's like when you watch Cannibal Holocaust or something and the lines feel blurry. And that's part of what makes it so impactful. And terrifying. I would never watch Cannibal Holocaust again for that reason, but it's one of the most it's left so much residue on me over the years because I find it so disturbing. And the original Last House on the Left is like that for me as well, because it does, when I'm watching it, I do feel like there is actual pain on screen.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I think just looking at it as a consumer of film, that makes it stand out to me as, you know, maybe one of the most, like, it reminds me of Blair Witch in a lot of ways too, where the lines are really blurry and there was a certain amount of pain being inflicted on the people in this movie. And those movies tend to really linger for that reason. And that's why I say that there's an evil quality to them. Whereas I just remember the 2009 version looking so slick in Hollywood. And I think that was my reason for not being interested in it.
Yeah.
I think horror needs to have a certain amount of gristle and verisimilitude to, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating abuse on sets, but it's like, I think sometimes when you can see through the veil and you can see actual struggle in a horror movie, there is something extremely upsetting, but you know, lingering about that. And I don't know. So
Yeah.
I believe verisimilitude is Superman's favorite word in Superman the movie. No joke.
Is it really?
I love that word. I'm pretty sure that's his favorite word.
I love it too. Blood
were
spatter
you-
is Lois's first word that she asked how to spell.
Great bits in that first one that went right over my head as a kid. Have you, Randall, were you at the Music Box when we saw Cannibal Holocaust?
no, I've only watched it at home.
Okay, well, the only time I saw it was at the Music Box Theater. And of course, it was very jarring, especially in the big screen. But I remember leaving, and I think it was with Mike, and we ran to an old colleague of ours, and he had taken somebody there on a first date.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me this.
It didn't last, but I was like,
Oh,
shocker.
and she was just kind of stunned, you know.
It's like
but
Taxi Driver.
I'll never forget that for the rest of my
Wow.
life. It's what not to do on a first date. Cannibal
yeah.
Holocaust.
Cannibal Holocaust. Yeah, I could think of a
Tough beat.
million other movies.
I took a second date to Gus Van. Wait, was it Gus Van? No, Lars von Trier's Melancholia.
Oh my
And there
God.
was not a third date.
I went on a first date to Closer, which is not that great, but it is very sexy, but uncomfortable sexy. But yeah, it's interesting to hear him say crap fest because there is a really low budget quality to Last House on the Left, which is kind of like Randall, what you were talking about. The grit, and it reminds me of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you know, it's
Right,
like
exactly.
it pervades, you know, and I wonder if it's kind of the execution that he's looking at of when he uses the word crap fest, although I think that is the power of the film, you know, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think, you know, if you look at the grand scheme of things with that first movie, you know, I love a good exploitation movie, but the events themselves are presented really realistic and horrifying, but then they're swapped off throughout the rest, like the second half of that movie, with kind of like the Keystone Cops, like with the bumbling music in the background.
Yeah.
And I believe it's our boy John Kreese from Karate Kid, who's one of those cops, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Am I right?
Which is
Yeah.
part of why it's so upsetting, I think.
That
is
might
because
be
of
something that he was
that
thinking about
moment,
in terms
yeah.
of like amateur hour. Maybe he didn't feel like it was. So I'm saying that I've not seen the remake, but I doubt there is, you know, Keystone Cop moments in the remake.
No.
I doubt it. So
And also
knows?
John Kreese up next to Big Jim Rennie is one of my least favorite villains of all time. I have a lot of thoughts about John Kreese that I will say for.
Wait, do you mean like affectionately least favorite or
No, like I hate him. Like I have like a lot of childhood anger for this
Oh,
character.
so it's a positive. So you're like, it's a positive thing. You hate him.
Oh
but
yes,
it's a good
yes.
character.
He is an effective villain. Like I cannot stand this character. I
gotta
do not
say,
want
I'm very
Cobra Kai.
excited to see where the next season of Cobra Kai picks up.
God.
With
Oh
how he
my
left his
God, he's
storyline.
on the run. Kreese on the
not.
run.
I am not doing him as a hero. I'm just going to say right now. But
Unless Terry Silver's back, I don't care.
exactly, yeah. Give me Terry Silver and give me the Barnes kid.
Get,
you know,
get rid
I'll
of
be
these
happy.
kids. We're done. I've been saying this for 5 years.
Except
Done.
for Robbie. Robbie can stay around.
Oh, that freaking kid.
sorry.
He's very hunky.
He is
The
yeah.
star of He's All That. Oh, boy.
I just
God.
love that
God.
hat hair, you know. But what I think is interesting
shirt.
about the original Last House, the original Last House on the Left, in comparison to Cobra Kai, is, you know, one of the Randall, you asked me if I like it, and I don't really like the original. And I think for a while I didn't really consider it rape revenge because she doesn't get the revenge. Spoiler, and she dies. You know, I don't want to spoil that movie, but you know,
50 years old.
It's an old movie.
They believe
it
You
is.
haven't seen
So
it?
there's like a defending your house, and the girl is a like an extension of your house kind of quality that I don't know if I love. I do still think it's a great movie, but I wonder like if the bleakness of it is what Stephen King doesn't necessarily like. You know, is that
Yeah.
she doesn't come out and find her way home like Tess does, you know?
Steven, come back on the pod. We'll just talk about
hey.
we'll give you the forum to talk about Last House. Both
Hey, you
versions.
can rant all you want, and we'll call it the
We will
Last
watch
House
the
crap.
2009
I'll even
Last House on
rewatch
the Left.
the original one, and I will watch the 2009 one.
Yes,
God help
we'll
me.
take diligent notes. Well, speaking of, speaking of watching those movies, let's move into The Hook. Because, I don't know, we might have to take a big hook to drag us to them. I don't know.
Think about Candyman, but I guess it's a revenge movie. So
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Urban legend. There's a.
yeah, sure.
We'll fix it in post. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll get it. We'll get there. So we're going to move into The Hook.
Yes. Don't you see? Don't you see how clear it all is? Not only can you see the future, I can change it. You can change it, exactly.
Welcome to The Hook. This is when we talk about killers with big hooks that they use to kill people, and also kind of the main idea of the novella. So I turned to our fearless Grady Hendrix doing his the great Stephen King reread, and I pulled just a couple of quotes that I want to talk about with just kind of the hook of this story. So in the Guardian review, or his piece on it, he writes, Big Driver, the second novella, is told in King's usual voice. It's easy, comfortable reading, deceptively so. Like many of his stories, it features a writer, in this case Tess, author of a series of uninspired mysteries, who is just driven to give a talk to a small-town book club. On her way home, she's sent on a shortcut and is brutally raped and almost murdered by the eponymous, I don't know how to say that. Big Driver. Eponymous. I think I did know.
Verisimilitude.
Hippopotamus. Big Driver. An efficient revenge fantasy, this was the only one of the stories in which the beats were predictable, and for me, it was the least satisfying. I took the most pleasure in the snapshot of contemporary America in the background of the story. So my question is, rape revenge stories tend to be a little formulaic, kind of like slashers. Like there is a formula to them. Do we find Big Driver predictable? And if so, does that help or hinder its success?
I think I'm like, here's the thing. I'm like extremely gullible. I don't guess things often.
Mm-hmm.
So this, I've read this before and I was still like shocked by the turns in it.
Uh-huh.
Like, I had totally forgotten the Ramona twist. I had totally forgotten the brother twist, that the person she I mean, here's the thing. When they happened, I remembered them because I had read it before. But like going into it, it wasn't until she started researching Ramona that I was like, oh yeah, she was in on it. And then, you know, when she got to the truck and shot the brother, I was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. Like these were things that just had completely slipped my mind. So I kind of enjoyed it all over again. I actually thought I enjoyed all the twists and turns. Maybe it's like predictable for the genre, but yeah, I don't know. I think I'm kind of a mark. And so I was like, oh wow, it's a whole conspiracy, you know, which is cool. And we'll talk about why that's relevant to the larger themes later, but
bigger.
But yeah, it works
bigger
for me.
themes. Yeah. Well, and I think what I'm kind of trying to get at with this question is like, do we want this story to be predictable? Because like I kind of do. I don't want the rape to happen, but I want her to get revenge, and I want it to be fun, or I want it to be brutal, and I just want them to die. And that's really what I need from the story. And so like that criticism of it being predictable, I was like, well, yeah, like it's doing the thing, you know,
Exactly.
that's what it's doing, you know?
If you look at the literal ABC of the storyline, sure, it's predictable. But I remembered in this reread the Ramona subplot. So that made that reread that much more kind of malevolent, reading her telling Tess where to go and knowing
at the
that
beginning?
she knows, and the reread, right? But I had forgotten about the subplot with the brother. I'd totally forgotten about that part of it.
Yeah.
So, you know, like we talked about earlier, it's predictable to a point, but like you said, Jen, I mean, we want to get to that satisfying end of the brutal takedown that normally happens to these people in these movies, or excuse me, in this case, the story. So
yeah,
it's not a detriment to me, and that's no shots. I think it's wild because I read those rereads that Grady Hendrix was doing for years, Jen, and before I think he was that well known, or before I knew who he was as an author. I did not realize that was the person I've been reading in The Guardian, because he was going like book by book. That's the guy.
Yeah.
I did not
I
know
remember
that was
I
him.
really enjoyed his Cujo one. And I've kind of fell off.
So did I.
whenever I like can't find a review or research, I'm like, I wonder if Grady Hendrix has written something that I can at least pull. But yeah, and he's got a couple of other things that I'm not going to read, but one of the things he talks about is something that I think can maybe lead us into heroes and villains. And he talks about kind of the moral ambiguity of this story. And one of my questions when we get to other people or people that are not Tess is, who deserves to die? How do we feel about these deaths? And who deserves this revenge? So let's move into heroes and villains.
I'm gonna have to kill this fucking.
Actually,
Oh, do you want to talk more about Hook?
yeah,
Go for it.
if that's okay.
That's a record
absolutely.
scratch there.
Yeah, yeah.
Kyle does a record scratch.
I just want to say, like, I mentioned earlier that there's like a complexity, I think, to this as a rape revenge story. I think sometimes it wears its complexity on its sleeve. King is sort of talking himself like through it as he's writing it, which I find interesting. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I like that he engages with the sort of selfish side of the survivor, the question of what's in it for me. That's like really compelling. It's really dark. And I think very honest. I think that what we often refer to as quote unquote cancel culture is born from that very question, for better or worse. I think King wanted to write a rape revenge piece, but he also wanted to grapple with the moral question of revenge. And what's interesting is we're traveling with Tess and King as they try to wriggle themselves out of what would likely be considered the most morally sound choice, which is to call the police and not get involved. When she doesn't, and she gets her revenge in these very satisfying ways, you know, like not only do we get one rapist killed, we get a rapist and two accomplices killed, which is triple the fun, right? Because as you said, Jen, you want a little bit of predictability because you want to see these people hurt and suffer. King gives us that. This is what I was getting at when I said he kind of wants it two ways. He gives us that. And their deaths are, especially Little Driver, the one who was like the true rapist, he gets sort of this very satisfying, comical, grotesque death, you know? And it's interesting because after she gets her revenge in those ways, it seems as if King is going to punish her, right? First, because she killed the wrong guy and she has to live with the sense that she killed an innocent person. And then by realizing that there's no way she could get away with it and she's going to like kill herself. He gives her escape hatches for both of those. He gives her, you know, oh, wait, no, Big Driver was actually involved and complicit. So she's like, okay, that's okay. I can roll with that. And then she is basically like, well, I can't get away with this. I'm going to get caught. So I might as well kill myself. And then she kind of has this guardian angel in this woman who is happy to keep her secret. And so like, you know, but I just think like, I remember I had forgotten how it ended. So when there's a line about vigilantism has created my own hell or something, you know, it's something like that. And so I was like, oh, okay, he's trying to punish her in this way to show that, you know, maybe getting that bloodlust is not as satisfying and it's not worth it. But in the end, it is worth it and it's justified. And even though her revenge was like done recklessly and to some degree selfishly, it proves itself to be justified. And she gets away with it, not without the presence of like a little bit of future danger. But actually what I thought about, I think what helped this story click a little bit to me, that didn't make me feel like he was having it both ways. And Jen, you mentioned earlier that there's a fantasy element to this. I think that's really true. And there's something similar in the movie that came out this year, How to Blow Up a Pipeline, which is obviously it's not a rape revenge story, but it's doing something similar in that despite its griminess and its grittiness and its, realism, it is in its own way a fantasy. And it's like Big Driver, I think, working to subvert its respective genre a bit by engaging with the moral question while also providing an ostensibly quote unquote happy ending. And that to me is super interesting because I think, but here's the thing is is that, I think Justin's question is good. Is that narratively satisfying? I found it thematically satisfying because I was turning around all of these ideas in my head. And I think he, you know, because I guess what I'm trying to get at is in rape revenge movies, there's either the defiant, I killed them and I got away with it, and we're all like riding off into the sunset together, and it's heroic. And then there's the one where it's like, I destroyed a part of myself by killing my rapist, right? And that's the darker moral version, the one that like tries to reckon with what it actually means to take a life. And King is bridging that gap a little bit, you know? Or at least he's trying to. And I'm not sure he does it fully successfully. But I appreciate the swing because I think that to me is what makes the story interesting.
Yeah.
And more than just kind of a predictable, quote unquote, rape revenge story. So yeah, those are my hook thoughts.
Well, and it reminds me of the ending of Gerald's Game, or specifically like the adaptation of it, which I know is a little bit contentious among us, and I find it really, really satisfying. I love the ending of it emotionally, but I agree with the criticism that it does feel very upbeat, and it does feel like it kind of turns into a different movie in the last 10 minutes. And I think what I love about it is that movie feels like it's pulling me along the ride, and I want to go back out in the sun when it's over. But I think that the scarier element is that she is still haunted by this, you know? And I think I don't want Tess to leave this story feeling guilty or feeling like on the verge of like dying by suicide every day, and wondering if she did the right thing. I want her to find her own way home. But on the other hand, that's not reality. And there is an element of like, well, the next day she's probably going to have those same doubts, you know? And by fitting all of the pieces together and figuring out that, oh, wait, no, he was guilty. It's okay. It's okay that I killed him. I feel like it might be letting the complexity off the hook just a little bit. You know, it feels a little easy, but I like it. I like the feeling of reading that, but I think narratively, I agree with you.
You can see, like I said, the word wriggling, like he's wriggling towards this ending because I think he's realizing I don't want it to just be that she kills them.
Yeah.
I don't want it to just be that she is punished. I want it to be something else because I like this character and I want to give her what is the best version of this ending. And I think, and there's so much of her talking through every decision, right? And that for me, it doubles. It's like also King. He is writing his way to an ending that maybe he hasn't quite earned, but to make a larger point, I think. And so I don't know. Ultimately, I think it works for me. I do like this story quite a bit.
Yeah, me too.
But again, it's one of those where I think I just like where it ends up as a reader. And as someone who wants to think critically about what it is he is writing about. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, but we can talk more about the narrative aspects in a bit.
I was wriggling myself earlier, trying to rack my own brain about how, well, I want realism, but at what cost, right? At the entertainment cost. And I get where you're coming from with the fantasy angle, especially when it comes to Tess and her inner workings, right? But I think that I always found that she was definitely in a real world. And so I was trying to reconcile those two things together. And I think on top of that, the story, I feel like you could have her kill. It's confusing. Is it Big Driver? Because Big Driver is truly the brother.
Yes.
Yeah. Little Driver is the rapist.
Okay, we'll refer to Little Driver as Little Driver.
Because he was in the pool.
You could do the Little Driver killing and then having her try to figure out what to do and then meeting with, is it Betsy?
Betsy Neal, yeah.
Yeah, Betsy. I feel like you could still do that and have her, that's how she figures out what to do, and she has to deal with what she's done. But I just feel like the story had kind of ended. And it also I know I'm kind of going over the place. It really is a back and forth situation. I don't feel defiantly about one way or the other. It's not a make it or break it thing necessarily. But I'm also kind of reminded, you'll hear, I don't want to get too descriptive, but these people you'll hear kill people.
Mm-hmm.
who are unarmed, right? Or we have to name names, right? And then we find out later that those people they killed controversially had a bad background.
Mm-hmm.
And now those people are now justified in their killings.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I feel kind of happens to Tess here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, well, congratulations, he was actually a bad guy, but at the same time, you can't just. It's complicated with this.
It is.
Which
Didn't
makes
know
it, you know what
that.
though? I will say so. At least we're talking about something like that. It isn't cut and dry or too simplistic. It is complicated. It's complicated from a moral standpoint, and it's complicated from a storytelling standpoint of a satisfying work of fiction. So, yeah, I've been going back and forth about it since I finished it a few days ago, or last week, I guess it was. But I'm happy we're talking about it now. I'll
the rape revenge genre is they're satisfying because there's no complexity to the rapist.
True. That is true.
And that's not a dig. That's part of what makes it satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, and I don't want to, I feel like there's like avenues I could go down that would get, that could potentially be contentious just in this discussion about complexity with a character who is, a rapist.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think that's kind of where he lands in this, is that perhaps it's a true rape revenge story, because in the end, even though she grapples with the idea that she has killed an innocent person, he is ultimately rendered to be a flatly evil person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think and we can all justify and content ourselves with the idea that it's okay she killed him, he was bad.
That's what I'm saying.
And and I think that to me is, if you want, I think you have to engage with it on that level in order for it to be satisfying, which is kind of the unspoken agreement when you enter into a rape revenge film.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where I land.
You know what, Jen? I guess you could say, like it or not, King really did let Tess off the hook. I mean, who are you talking about? This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable.
It is. I thought you were going to say King did let her drive down the Life as a Highway.
Oh, no, I can't. I'll let you make those.
Not nearly as well.
Maybe I'll land that later on. But,
You'll land that plane here in the cemetery, maybe. I did, and I mean, we may have already answered this question, but like the question I was going to ask, and then I kind of backed off, was what do we think about the scope? Because Tess is not just taking down her rapist. She's taking down a system that perpetuates it. And she is specifically, and King is casting blame on people who allowed this to happen. So would we prefer this story if Roberta and Big Driver were not a factor? If it was just her killing her rapist, or do we like the complexity? And I think I do like the complexity, and I think with this subgenre, it's not it is one of the most tricky subgenres in all of narrative, because, of society and, the nature of revenge and the nature of justice that we're able to get through legitimate quote unquote means. And so I think it's messy, and I like that he's tackling that. But do y'all have any thoughts about that? Would you prefer it to just be a straight one-off, or do you like the messy?
No, I think, like I said, the story is satisfying because of how messy it gets. If she had, we always want people to feel comfortable enough to go to authorities, right? I mean, we'll talk about that, I think, a lot in the heroes and villains sections about how they handle her decision not to report it. Yeah. But, again, for this subgenre and this particular story, I'm glad she just says, fuck that. I'm gonna kill these fuckers.
Yeah.
Right? I that is satisfying to me as a reader. So, it works for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to say a name that may make you all groan, but this is what made me think of Jeffrey Epstein. Isn't the fantasy that we live in? I don't want to be I'm not going to be annoying, I promise.
No, you're fine. I was just groaning because you told me that I needed to.
Yeah, I know.
I feel like Harry in the conversation, like they're listening to the walls. They're listening to us. They're tapping into this Zoom call.
Well, I guess what it made me think of when you start talking about systemic issues is this is where it really becomes a fantasy, right? Because if someone actually is caught and there is a systemic quality behind the assault to some degree, whether it was being perpetuated by, institutionally or by, law enforcement, any of these things, usually there is a scapegoat provided, and that person is the one who takes the fall. I just thought, you think of a lot about what's going on with Jeffrey Epstein. I think there was a lot of efforts made by the institutions that were wrapped up in his business to basically be like, no, him and Ghislaine were just bad eggs, right? And he died in his prison cell. Ghislaine went to trial. And the other, what's his name? Luke, I can't remember. No. There was a fashion designer or fashion guru from France who also died in his prison cell, who was intimately acquainted with them. Just killed himself. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm not putting the tinfoil hat on. This is just facts. And I'm just saying that nobody else has really been charged with any of these crimes. They're basically just like, we got Ghislaine, let's move on from this. Let's not look around. Let's not lift any rocks. Okay. And I think that's, I think the systemic aspect, all of this is just simply say is that is usually what we never get, which is the systemic takedown of this sort of thing. And it is so deeply rare when that actually happens. And I think it's interesting. This is kind of a nice, simple way for King to show the various ways that people can be complicit in this kind of action. Ramona is not the person who committed the rape, but she is the one who basically created the environment where she could be in the wrong place at the wrong time for her son. And then the brother obviously seems to be involved in perhaps the pawning or the selling of whatever it is, items that they get off of the women that they, do this to. And it becomes this like little mini conspiracy. And so there is something very satisfying in seeing the whole operation be taken down. Right.
Yeah.
So I definitely prefer, this version of it.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, because I think a lot of the times the reason we don't get that takedown of the system is because the system is the patriarchy and the society. And the system is so large and all encompassing that where do you stop taking down, And I do like that King really kind of puts a bubble over it, it's like a dome of, it just feels like a very contained story, and it's very there is moral complexity, but the villains are clear and the hero is clear, and we get that satisfaction. But I do think that he handles the complexity of Tess's decision making very well, which leads me into heroes and villains.
I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown. Welcome to the Losers Club, asshole!
This is a section where we talk about the heroes and villains, hence the name. And I want to start with Tess. So I mentioned Ophelia Todd earlier, one of my favorite characters. And my ear went up because I've listened to that story so many times. When Tess said what she really liked to do was drive on page 137, I was like, so does Mrs. Todd. She likes to drive too. And then Roberta also says, I can save you 10 miles. So I was delighted when I afterward read King's connection to Ophelia Todd and Mrs. Todd's shortcut. And I really hadn't thought too much about Jess, but I do think that there's a lot of connective tissue there too. And I don't know if I really have a question about that, but just what are y'all's thoughts on that?
I can see that. I think I made the allusion to a funhouse mirror earlier. If the light version of these events is Mrs. Todd's shortcut, then the dark version would be Big Driver.
Yeah.
If you want to, that's it's an interesting pairing for sure.
It is.
Right?
Yeah. And it feels a little bit like the mix of these two characters, Jessie really kind of goes through the ringer and she has to dig back into her psyche, and she calls upon different elements of herself and she personifies them through people from her past, people from her life, or just kind of created things. And Ophelia Todd, she finds a lot of empowerment in this story, but it's not really through any major trauma or trial. It's just she keeps going forward, and that's how she empowers herself. And I feel like this feels like, I don't want to say Mrs. Todd's shortcut is not realistic or is dated or anything, but this feels
it's a little unrealistic.
It is a little bit, but this feels like kind of an evolution of that story, or a little bit more like a darker edge to it, which I fucking love.
Yes,
and I had never thought about it in connection with Tabby, which I also really love.
Which checks out. I wonder if he's driving with her sometimes. You hear these stories, he's like, I'm going to write the shit out of a story about this.
Exactly. Yeah. He's like,
for the years to
take
come.
that yeah. Yeah. It's his revenge, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
His right revenge. Wah, wah.
Oh, boy.
I know. Yeah, it's sad. All right. Well, let's talk about one of the things that I love the most about this story is I think that King really gets in Tess's head very well.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about Tess's decision not to report. I want to get your take on it. And I swear to God, I don't have an agenda. I honestly, I'm not trying to gotcha. You know, I am curious of your thoughts about this. It rings very true to me, but I'm curious to see your thoughts on it. And I pulled, I don't know, it's like 2 pages, but she goes into a lot of detail. And I find what she says to be very relatable, you know,
Yeah.
and I don't know how much I'll actually read of this, but
I've got some of it too. I mean,
do you?
Some instances.
Okay.
I think it's funny because we're coming off of Holly when, you know, I think we voiced our various issues with the way certain themes were handled in that. I think they're a little too transparent, a little too newsroomy. If you've seen the Newsroom, you know what I mean. Snooze room. But I actually think I like the way that King sprinkles in her reasoning throughout the story for people who might not understand right away. So Jen, cut me off if you got any of these. But
oh no, go for it.
She does it through obviously various interactions with people, her own history with a subject matter, and then just being in genuine fear for her present. I think the "you like it, it likes you" sign on the closed down store, I think it symbolizes many victims' irrational belief that they secretly asked for it.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of rapists would say.
Yes, exactly.
If somebody confronted them, oh, come on, you liked it, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Tess recalls an incident of a male novelist's leaked psychiatric sessions or psychiatrist sessions. And she even says how she actively listened to the gossip about it, even though it was betraying a code right there. So that's another reason she hesitates. And then when I think it is Betsy who upon meeting Tess says, quote, "I don't mean to offend you, but you probably don't have any business in a place like this to begin with. It didn't turn out so well for you, and if it got into the papers, well, my gran would be very disappointed." So
I wrote a big old "fuck you" next to that passage.
Yeah, but you believe that somebody would say that, right?
Exactly.
We've seen people say stuff like that.
Yeah, I did not say "fuck you" to King. I said "fuck you" to.
Oh yeah, of course, to the scenario,
whoever,
right?
Betsy
And
Neal, yeah.
I think also, you know, for people to be viewed as a victim by not just strangers, by friends. You know, it's an extremely complicated situation, and we don't live in a world where you can just go to the cops, say this happened, and it's done. And
absolutely,
it's not that simple.
Yeah,
and I think King does a really sensitive job handling that. I really do.
Yeah,
I do too.
And historically too, I mean, how often do cops actually, you know, solve this issue?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And, it's and she says too, it's a very hard thing to prove a lot, especially after she showered and, you know, her bruises started to heal. This is something I think, you know, at least I've heard women talk about a lot, which is that it is a very difficult thing sometimes to basically prove that someone raped you.
Yeah. I wrote about this a while ago in the context of the autopsy of Jane Doe. And because I reported, I don't want to say it was minor, but an incident. And reporting it was worse than the actual thing that happened, you know, and nothing happened. Like the guy, I still see him at the grocery sometimes, you know. So, you know, it is so, and I won't link that, but I'll let you know where you can find that at the end of the episode if you want more of my thoughts about it. I don't want to get into too much of the weeds, but yeah, it can be really traumatic. And I think that's why rape revenge is such a powerful subgenre for people that like it. It's because we feel like there's nothing you can do, you know, because the odds of anybody even really taking you seriously are so low that, like, what's the point? And there's a movie called Take Back the Night that is on Shudder right now, and it's very low budget. Like, it's not the best executed movie, but it explores that really well, like the re-traumatization that happens after you report. I do want to read just a little bit of this. It's on page 160, and I won't read the whole thing, but she's talking about wondering if he's out there, because if she doesn't report it, nobody's going to go looking for him. That's the other thing, is like he could come back. He knows who she is. So she said, she realized that from now on, he would always be out there unless the police caught him, and put him in jail. But for that to occur, she would have to report what happened. And the moment this idea came into her head, she saw a glaring black New York Post style headline: Willow Grove scribe raped after lecture. Tabloids like the Post would undoubtedly run a picture of her from 10 years ago, when her first Knitting Society book had been published. Back then, she'd been in her late 20s with long, dark blonde hair cascading down her back and good legs she liked to showcase in short skirts. Plus, in the evening, the kind of high-heeled slingback some men, the Giant for one, almost certainly referred to as fuck-me shoes. They wouldn't mention that she was now 10 years older, 20 pounds heavier, and had been dressed in sensible, almost dowdy business attire when she was assaulted. Those details didn't fit the kind of story the tabloids like to sell. The copy would be respectful enough, if panting a trifle between the lines, but the picture of old self would tell the real story, one that probably predated the invention of the wheel. She asked for it, and she got it. Was that realistic, or was that only her shame and badly battered sense of self-worth, imagining the worst-case scenario? The part of her that might want to go on hiding in the bushes, even if she managed to get out of this awful road and out of this awful state of Massachusetts and back to her safe house in Stoke Village, she didn't know, and guessed that the true answers lay somewhere in between. One thing she did know was that she would get the sort of nationwide coverage every writer would like when she publishes a book, and no writer wants when she has been raped and robbed and left for dead. She could visualize someone raising a hand during question time and asking, "Did you in any way encourage him?" So I think, and there's a little more, and I've got a lot of that in Word Processor of the Gods, but I think he just really walks through all of the steps. And that's like, I wonder if this story started as Tess and Big Driver and Roberta and Little Driver, or the other one, the brother, was not a part of it, but he just, in putting the pieces of the story together and walking through it, he was like, well, yeah, what about this? And what about that? And that feels like a very King storytelling thing to do, is just kind of follow the trail. And I love how he does that with this decision,
Yeah, we know he just writes. He doesn't really plan it out, so it's possible. It's possible that was his way of going about it.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I want to talk about is on page 172, I want to talk about kind of a theme in the whole collection, I believe, is like finding darkness within yourself, or stumbling upon darkness that you didn't quite realize may have been lurking there. Sorry if you're hearing my pages turn. But on 172, she talks about, it's not that I have anything to be ashamed about, she whispered at the woman in the mirror, looking at herself in the mirror. The new woman with the crooked nose and the puffy lips. It's not that, true, but public exposure would make her ashamed. She would be naked, a naked victim. Actually, I don't think that's the section I meant to read, but I do like that section. But she's talking about the new woman, and I want to talk about the new Tess and kind of this transition in how she kind of develops and embraces this darker side of her. I don't really have a question, but just kind of, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's inevitable that no matter what happens to her after the story ends, and no matter how you react to it, as in Tess, no matter how Tess reacts to this going forward, I mean, she's forever changed. And she is a new woman, right? Yeah. She may appear to be the same in many ways, but I think inside, not to get too specific, but I do believe that you're a different person when something like that happens to you. And it's all about how you present yourself and how you can deal with being this new person. That is the thing, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like some people might, or at least at certain times in history, people would say, it was a horrible thing. Move on, get over it, move on with your life. And I think what she's getting at here is, it's not my choice. I mean, obviously there are ways to move on, but there is, like Justin said, an irrevocable change that is going to happen. Yeah. When something this traumatic happens to you, and she thinks about, she won't feel comfortable, leaving the house without a gun nearby from here on out. Like there's just those small changes. She thinks about all the ways that her life will be different now from here on out. And there is like a sadness and a terror that accompanies that. And it's not a matter of her needing to quote unquote get over it or something. It is just like, I have been exposed to a darker side of the world and of humanity than I think I thought existed, or, you know, it never would have happened to me. Right. And a certain amount of comfort and a certain amount of complacency is gone forever. And that to me is extremely powerful. And that's not something that she moves on from by the end of the story. There's not this sense of she's returned to herself before the event. And I think it's good that he doesn't demonize that aspect of it, but he does paint this portrait of someone who is horrified by the sense that everything will be different from here on out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it reminds me of It Follows, which may be one of the hardest rape revenge movies for me to watch. And there, I'm thinking particularly of a scene where Jess is looking at herself in the mirror and, you know, she's not saying anything, but like my mind says she's looking for differences. She's looking to see how she's changed, you know, even though it has just been one day later. And I think that is maybe what I like about the ending of this story is that I feel like it does give us an answer and it does give us closure, but it still acknowledges that there is no easy answer, and that the fact that there are systems that perpetuate this kind of stuff is not solved by just taking out Big Driver and Little Driver and her mom. Like it keeps going because it keeps happening. And like, I don't know, people call me, I talk about this stuff a lot, and I know some people are over me talking about it, but like, I'll stop talking about it when it stops happening. And so that's what I like about the story, is that there is an implication that she has gotten some kind of closure, and that this new woman may be more powerful, but that might not necessarily be good. You know, she doesn't want to be this new woman, but she is, and she is kind of navigating that, which is why I think, which maybe can move us into our next character. I say character. I want to talk about Tom, or Tom, because I almost did not put him on the list because he's not actually a person, but I'm interested in how Tess talks to him. He's comforting. He seems to be both kind of her conscience, her guide, and also kind of a tool that allows her to disassociate and process what happened to her. He like literally gives her someone to talk about. And I think, you know, if this were a film, we would need, because we can't hear Tess's thoughts, we would need her to have a dialogue with somebody. But in a story, and we know King is really good at like writing thought processes, but what do y'all make of Tom? Do you like this kind of development in the story, Justin?
I think this worked much better for me this time around. I remember being kind of put off by it when I first read it back in 2010. But I mean, it does serve, like you said, Jen, it's a good device to get outside of complete inner thought, you know, in italics for 80, 100 pages or whatever it is. And also, from what I recall, it's also a good way to separate the structure of this book from that of the next novella we're going to be covering, Good Marriage. And it's a different type of inner monologue and how the lead of that is treated. So this works for me. And obviously that kind of bleeds over into Fritz talking to her and other people talking to her. And when you were talking about if this was made into a movie, which it was, but I'm not sure how they handle it in the movie. It reminds me of that character that they added for the 11/22/63 miniseries.
Yes.
For a certain part of that book where it is just Jake talking to himself, basically. And you need to have somebody else there as a visual sounding board, as opposed to what you can get away with in a book or in a story or a novel, whatever.
Yeah, I think a lot about Gerald's Game. I think if there's Gerald's Game, there's the various manifestations, the voices that she talks to they're very distinct, and they each represent a very particular part of her psyche. I feel like it's less defined here. I like the convention of it. I feel like, is it Doreen is the name of the protagonist from her book? I like that character enters into it. I wish that character entered in earlier. So there were more distinct personalities, because I think Fritzy and Tom are a little too similar in terms of what they provide to her, in terms terms of the kind of, whatever part of her that she is interrogating. I think it gets a little muddled. She even says at one point, like, Fritzy, that's something Tom would say.
Yeah.
And I remember being a little frustrated because I'm like, I need a little bit more distinction between these two. Whereas Doreen was a character who, because she was more the mystery solving one, right? And and since it was a character she had written, there was like a really clear, POV from that particular entity. And that reminded me most of Gerald's Game. But I like the convention. I think it's necessary for her to have the conversation, right? Because the question, and I know I've brought this up, but it's what I'm going to keep going back to because to me it is the most interesting, question. I think at the heart of the story is what's in it for me. Is she needs to ask somebody that, and she asks Tom that. It's like that is her way of working out the answer to that question. Is it needs to be a dialogue, and so I think that's where that is helpful in terms of, grappling with the various sides of the various answers to that question.
Yeah. Well, and on page 143, I almost put this in room 237, but she is talking about Tom not needing signs, and she refers to Tom as other directed, which stood out to me because that's how Glenn Bateman refers to Mother Abigail in The Stand, says that she is other directed. And I think he's talking about it in more like an academic kind of way. But I do think that Tom is a really interesting, like it's interesting that he's a GPS. And of course, now our GPSs are our phones.
Yeah, so it's such a time capsule.
It really is,
just
a little microcosm, But I remember when they were like separate things, and you would carry them or you would mount them on your dashboard. And
maybe she was listening to her iPod at one point too,
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the Psycho remake. But I think one of the things I love is the last sentence of this book where she's talking about, I think I can find my way home on my own. And I agree with you. I think Randall, there are times where the characters don't feel as distinct as in Gerald's Game. Of course, we also spend a lot more time with those characters too. But I think they like blend together as Tess maybe is working out her use for them or maybe processing out the need for them. And I think by the end, she still sees Tom as a comfort, but maybe not as a necessity anymore,
I think when you... and maybe I'm mixing it up because it's possible this isn't 100% right, but I think when she's in the car, it's always Tom she's talking to, right? So when she's not in the car and she's in her house, it becomes Fritzy the cat. And then when she's not in the house and she's not in the car, it's Doreen, right? Doreen's never talking to her in the car, is she?
I think she talks to Tom a little bit outside.
No, I'm saying, does Doreen talk to Tess in the car? Ever.
Well, Doreen doesn't enter into it until she pieces together that there's brothers, right?
Yeah.
That she killed the wrong one, basically.
Yeah.
So
because it's the mystery solving aspect.
But when you think about it, there are
personality.
some times when Tom is also hinting at some things that she should think about too. So I think they're all just one giant blob of imagination.
They are, and I think it's interesting to kind of navigate the various different characters of them. I think, and one of the things that I did not like in the adaptation of this is that we see Olympia Dukakis plays Doreen, and I don't know who plays Fritzy the cat, and I can't remember who plays Tom, but it
is
just
Fritzy
feels
the cat played by Tom from Tom and Jerry.
Yes, actually, and it's weird. Jerry plays Tom. So, just all kinds of levels,
It's played by the cat from Pet Sematary.
Well, it was supposed to, but then he died. And
we brought him back.
Then he came back. We brought him back, So, sorry. But yeah, I feel like in the movie, it feels very ham-fisted and it feels very hokey. And I think here he really pulls it off and it feels really authentic. It feels like the way maybe I might process something like this,
I've heard the movie was no good.
It's, I don't remember very much about it.
It runs out of gas.
Sounds like it. Small driver.
Yeah, small driver.
Beep, beep.
Well,
beep,
hey,
Randy.
Speaking of small drivers, let's talk about Little Driver. And, these are bad characters. So I guess what I more am wanting to know is there anything in particular we want to say about these characters, but do they deserve to die? So Little Driver is the one who actually rapes her. He is the one who is wearing his truck. He has set this plan into motion. So deserves to die, yes or no? I would say. Before we
yay.
answer this question, I'm going to
Sorry.
point right at the camera and say, yes, we know murder is bad. Moms are bad too.
Sure.
So, don't at me. But yes, I would say Little Driver deserves to die.
Yeah, I think this is.
go ahead, Justin.
I'm pretty clear cut on this. I'm not. I would never advocate vigilantism for similitude. Vigilantism. Yeah, I got it down. But when I hear stories of this happening, I'm never like, oh no, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes, he deserves to die, and I'm happy that she shot him right in that fucking head. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No problem.
Yes,
with
they
him dying.
deserve to die, and I hope they burn in hell.
Agreed.
Sorry, I
Wait,
had to
what's
do
that?
it.
Hey, look, there's a time to kill.
A Time
Samuel
to Kill.
Jackson and A Time to Kill,
That's
but also
it.
done
A Time to Kill.
very hilariously by Dave Chappelle on Chappelle Show. Anyways, yeah. I mean, here's the thing: I have chosen as king, as in some ways directed, I think, by the narrative. This is a rape revenge story. I am looking at it through that lens, and through that lens, of course, they deserve to die. I refuse to look at them as complex characters. I don't even think this story is necessarily asking me to look at those three characters, Ramona, Al, and I can't remember the younger one,
Lester.
Little Driver. Buster?
Is it Lester?
Oh, I thought you said Buster, and I
No.
thought you were making like an Arrested
He
Development
does feel
joke.
like a Lester,
Yeah. Well, I think those, I don't think he asks us to see them as complex people. He wants us to see Tess as a complex person who is grappling with a very complex issue. And if we talk about the cop out, right? If we talk about it's because they're not complex characters.
Yeah.
But I also don't know if I want them to be in this story, because that's a very different story, and one that would require many more pages, I think. So
It becomes Rose Matter in italics, when we're following her abusive.
Although look at Rose Matter. I mean, Norman is an absolute fucking monster.
Yeah.
Like, he turns into a bull at the end. It's like,
He's
I think
literally a
that,
monster.
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, and we talk about that a lot in our Rose Matter episode. I think it's, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I think that, yes, they deserve to die, and I hope they burn in hell.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. I believe that murder is bad. But I will also say, and this is my response to, I think, criticisms of the rape revenge subgenre in general, is it wouldn't exist if we could get fucking justice for sexual assault. So maybe if you've got a problem with Tess killing people, then let's start with why she's killing them and start doing something about keeping that from happening. So yes, I don't advocate for murder, but also what are the other options? And that is why this exists. That's why she doesn't consider going to the police, because she knows they're not going to do anything,
And the fact, again, not just the fact that he's done this, but evidence shows he's a serial rapist.
Yes.
And then knowing that his mother is deliberately putting women in harm's way to be raped and murdered. I have no qualms.
She's got to go.
You
gotta go. Yeah.
Now, I'll go ahead, Jen. But yeah.
I'm okay with Tess being the only complicated character in this story, because I feel like in reality, the second we hear about this, we start complicating the perpetrator side of the story. And we say, oh, well, he's a good boy. He's got his whole future ahead of him. It's fine. And I am sick to death of that, And I mean, I don't think it's bad to complicate him. Like Randall and I on the Boys podcast talked a lot about the Deep. And I love the Deep story and figuring out why he did that. But that's because I already know Starlight so well. And we get a lot more of her story too. And I feel like with a short story of this length, there's really only room for me to understand one of them. And if I'm going to understand one of them, it's going to be Tess. And I, have seen a million other rapists that I'm supposed to empathize with, So yeah, he's got to go.
Gotta go.
Well,
Bye-bye.
Do we want to talk? Let's talk about his brother, Big Driver. How do we, or just the brother, the one that wasn't actually raping, because I keep getting the bigness of them mixed up,
Al.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Al. So what we learn, well, let me ask two questions. How do we feel about the way King wrote it? And how would we feel about him dying if we didn't know that he was part of this?
I've come to this thought, and I hate it when we always, especially me, when I'm always like, well, I didn't like it because this didn't happen, as opposed to just, critiquing it on the merit of the actual material.
Yeah.
But I wonder if, I'm just spitballing here, maybe the two of you agree with me, if she was having complicated feelings about Al, and then she went to his house and discovered all these items, and then she killed him. Mm-hmm. That's a different story for me. That would be fine. Mm-hmm. I just don't understand. You're right. The story comes to its conclusion, and then we spend the last 20 pages of the story trying to alleviate Tess's guilt by just saying that this guy, it's even suggested that not only did he know it was happening, it's also possible that he was also doing the same thing.
Yeah, it is.
So,
she was going to kill herself because she killed an innocent person.
Yes.
And then Doreen pops in her head and says, but have you considered that maybe he was in on it? And if you go poke around his house, you might find something. And so it's
a little convenient. That's a little convenient.
Yeah, like I said, it's the cop-out. But again, when I say cop-out, I'm not necessarily mad about it. I think that's kind of what we're all reckoning with. Yeah. So, all I'll say is that I resent King for making me feel something for that guy because he has an adorable dog, and I hope the dog's okay. Yeah. From eating all that raw hamburger.
He's got a whole big driver to eat now, so he'll
they should drag the body in the house. Let the dog
maybe she took the dog home. Like at the end of Face Off, doesn't he take the dog home or something like that?
Oh yeah, like in Silence of the Lambs.
Home.
Oh, the boy. It's a boy. It's his son. I'm like, does he take the dog home? No, it's his son. That's really... Wow, it's been a while. Sorry.
I think I kind of reckoned with my thoughts on that earlier. Is that Al is rendered a kind of featureless villain eventually. Mm-hmm. He gets to exist as a potentially complex character for about 20 pages, and then we say, okay, it's okay. He's bad, so he can die. So take it however you want, Yeah.
You could argue that King does not go full dark with this story.
Yeah. He gives us 1 or 2 stars, maybe.
Yeah. He gets dark, don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah. Oh, and we're going to read some of the dark stuff.
Does he go full dark? I don't know.
Does he go full dark?
And not to get super dark, but I do wonder if I'm thinking through her determination to, or her decision to want to die by suicide. Mm-hmm. So she gets home. If I'm walking through the beats of this story, she gets home. She's trying to recover at home. She wants to get out. She wants to go back out and do something about it. And I wonder if I were Doreen, I would be whispering in her ear, not, well, maybe he was a bad guy. I would be whispering, you already have to feel bad about being raped. You don't have to feel bad about killing this guy. You've got enough on your plate right now. And I wonder if part of her kind of suicidal ideation is just the trauma of what she's been through. And she does not want to have to go through the pain of recovering from this. And this is an easier way to justify suicide in her mind, you know?
And again,
and I don't...
I did not want her to kill herself. That was
I absolutely did not either. But I like that. That is something that people experience in the aftermath of this, especially something as brutal as this and as violent. And I'm not wanting to minimize or, diminish any other types of assault, but I didn't enjoy it, but I appreciated that element of the story because it felt really real, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I also think that in such a fragile state, I probably would think that too. I was like, well, there's no way out for me. I don't want to have to suffer and try to go through all this recovery in jail, so.
Well, and she's also going through it in her head again. What she's been thinking about the entire thing is how will people react to her?
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Beyond just the prison, and how will people see her going forward? Mm-hmm. And again, that's a huge issue.
Well, and if they catch her, then they know what happened. And that I think is the whole reason she didn't want to report in the first place. Mm-hmm. And so that could be, maybe, I don't want to say it's an easy out, but I think in her mind that seems like the most logical, or the most, I don't know, the easiest way to get out of the situation, that she can't change. Let's talk about Ramona Norville, who I kept calling Norma. I think I've got Pet Sematary Bloodlines on my brain.
Or even when you think about Psycho.
Oh yeah, or Psycho. That makes more sense. That is exactly what I was thinking, Justin. I didn't just forget her name. What do we think about Ramona?
I just love that she's like an old biddy with her Hummels, who is also secretly viciously evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's like pretty much my only thought is just she is it's a horrifying character who is built on a very funny archetype.
Mm-hmm.
I'll leave the description of her for Misery, the Misery section. But I mean, she's the perfect evil. This is a great example of like, the evil mom in a Stephen King story. Like you really just, again, you're thrilled. I've got the line when Tess kills her. It says, "The mistake was yours. It was not having your son castrated as soon as you found out what he was." And then he just shoots her. There's no like 10-page, I'm going to tie her up. No, he just shoots her. And I love the unceremony of that. And Lester's death are very satisfying to me. Again, satisfaction, right?
Yeah.
I was going to say the satisfying, like, I think the rape revenge, the simplicity of the rape revenge kind of comes through in that she gets all these quips off too before she kills people. Like she gets the Arnold lines.
Yeah,
which,
yes, 100%.
Which again feels like something from a more of a fantasy story than a real one, but they're satisfying. So.
I'll say that I feel like a real poser because I've not seen one movie starring Richard Widmark, who is referred to many times in the story.
Yes.
As a famous heavy in movies. I've never seen a Richard Widmark movie. So
I know. And not even The Green Mile, because it's not Richard Widmark in The Green Mile. Spoilers
You're right.
for King's Dominion. It is something else. Rita?
Oh, he was in old movies. I don't watch
you don't watch
movies.
black and white movies.
Black and white movies are for babies, right?
That's right.
Old biddies.
The thing
Old biddies.
To steal your Ramona description.
I pictured her as Ann Dowd. That's who plays her in the miniseries.
Good casting.
But I could also see her as maybe Bunny McDougal, who is, I don't know, she's in
That can't be a real person.
Frances Sternhagen. No, yeah, Bunny McDougal is from Sex and the City. It's it's Charlotte's mother-in-law, Frances Sternhagen.
And just like that.
He was in Michael Crichton's Coma, which I've seen.
I've not
Richard
seen.
Widmark? Oh.
Yeah.
That's fodder for the Crichton cast, isn't it?
It might be. I think we got a little spin-off. Widmark cast.
What I liked about Ramona,
80
the
movies.
Widmark cast, oh my God.
3 hours.
All black and white, yeah.
The Devil's Kiss, 1942. Oh, no.
Old biddies running down the stairs. What I do think is interesting about Norval, and it's kind of, or Ramona Norval, fuck all these names, man, is like we don't hear as much of her decision not to report her son or to support her son, but she does kind of give us a little bit, and it's something that King's going to expand on in a different way in A Good Marriage, but she does have her reasons for not reporting. And I think we see that with the brother. Like, this is why he wouldn't, because his parents like bullied him into it, or his parents convinced him like it would be worse. And I think what I think is interesting there, not to get my soapbox out again, but is that, yes, those sound awful. Those sound really bad. But think about the reasons that we just said Tess wasn't reporting, and which one of those is harder? So we need y'all to report things when you hear them, especially if you are not the victim, because it is exponentially harder for the victim to report. So that's, again, my public service announcement. I promise I only got like one or two more for this episode.
It makes sense to me. It makes sense to me.
Well, let's talk about Betsy Neal. There's not a whole lot to say about her because she really only pops up at the end of the story. One thing that bugged me about this character is, and Justin, you already read this, the I don't mean to offend you, but I think my granny would be upset. That strikes me as something that what a character who has been through what we learned she's been through would not say. And I wonder if that was just King wanting to get that out there,
Yeah.
Yeah,
he might. I mean, the thing is, he does. I bet when he wrote that scene, he didn't know how he was going to use her. You know what I mean?
think you're probably right. And there isn't another character that could say that,
Yeah.
I actually like the ending with her.
Yeah.
And her going back and forth and talking about her experiences. The one bit I kind of bucked up against that got a little too newsroomy, a little Holly, if you will, is when she started to just kind of list off the statistics.
I have
felt
that
a
under
little
misery.
bit like fourth wall, looking at the camera and saying, "Did you know?" It's like it was a little.
That's where King,
Yeah.
I think, I mentioned earlier, he's out of his depth a little bit. I think this
Good
is a
intentions,
situation.
obviously, but,
Yeah.
Good intentions,
transparent.
but I think this is a situation where he's like, okay, I can't speak from lived experience or anything, so I'm going to whip out some statistics. And yeah, that's big time Holly. It's Holly. People sound like press releases half the time.
Yeah,
It's
that's the
like,
problem.
so I mean, I think that, that's just an instance of him basically being like, this is the PSA moment. So.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have her story in, I think, The Cemetery, because I do find it really horrific.
Oh, it's very, very, very disturbing.
What I like about her character is I like where she falls in this story. And it's the reason that I keep talking about all of this stuff. I know it's not always easy to hear me talk about some of this stuff, but I think every time one person tells their story, it makes it easier for the next person, and it makes it easier for the next person. And, I would not have shared a lot of what I've shared if I hadn't heard other people share it. So, and I think we see that with Tess. Like, they sit down on the park bench together and she tells her story, and Tess sees, okay, this is someone who has been through this, a similar thing, and is still here. And that lets Tess know, if I'm projecting, maybe I can get to 15 years down the road and I can tell my story to someone else. And that's when she's able to kind of let go of Tom and start finding her own way.
Good.
So
ending.
I think like sharing, I think like not suffering alone is huge, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And difficult, to open up to someone. But go ahead.
Sorry.
Justin.
No, you go ahead. Finish now.
I was just going to say, like, I think when you go through something traumatic, the best thing you can do when you're ready is to seek out, I don't know, just like know that you're not alone, because I think that's the easiest feeling that you can have. And I think the fact that it ends with this moment of two women sort of helping each other in this moment is, I think very lovely in its way. So.
And this predates the extreme popularity of Twitter, but I think that what Tess learns here, like we've been saying, is the importance of connecting with a human being.
Yeah.
To really get through and to find a true connection, because I feel like the wrong way to go about it would just be for her to look for likes on social media by people she'll never know and never meet and never truly connect with. And I feel like that cycle can become very damaging, as we've seen people online that are just, it's a perpetual loop of they're not getting well, they're just going to keep going down this hellhole. And you have to truly reach out to somebody, whether or not they've been through something you've been through, to really find what's the word I'm looking for here? Not even closure necessarily, because you don't know if you ever truly get over this, but a way to accept it and try to move forward. I think you need to find a human being, not somebody who's just gonna like everything that you say on Twitter.
Someone, like just someone who will, a physical presence there to show you that you are not alone.
And it's not easy. And I'm not saying if you can't, it sucks. It's not easy for everybody. Like, not everybody's got a bunch of friends. It's really tough. But
Right.
I think you got to find somebody. It's hard. It's a hard. It's a hard situation. It's an impossible situation.
It really is. Yeah. And I think it's like, it's hope that you find, it's like, okay, well, people have survived this. I can survive this too, and I think, oh God, I keep losing my train of thought. But yeah, I really like how this story ends, and it's them kind of coming together and supporting each other. And, that's why I think it's important. What I was going to say, I remember. And this is a difficult subject. And I think that's why I keep stumbling over all of my words. But like, I think it is important for people who can share and can talk about this, and maybe have not, like, it is important for survivors to be able to tell their own stories, but that is really, really hard. It is incredibly hard to open that wound up publicly. And I think we already talked about why Tess didn't want to share. And I think King really kind of dives into the shame of that, and how much shame you can feel. And that's why it's really important for allies to talk about it, and people who are not like emotionally devastated or who are not ripping open major wounds to talk about it, because sometimes like we just can't, it's just really hard. It's going to re-trigger a bunch of stuff. And so we need, like, I imagine like them kind of like shouldering the weight, and I think that's where the story ends. And I really like it. So, well, let's move into some things we didn't like so much. The misery section.
She died. She just slipped away.
Slipped away! Slipped away! She didn't just slip away! You did it! 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 You murdered my misery!
Annie!
I had the one section that Justin, you read, I didn't mean to offend you. I don't hate that it exists. I just didn't want to read it, but I appreciate that King put it in the story because it is real. And people are more concerned about their grannies sometimes than they are like actual victims of things. I also, and I'm not going to give any comments on this at all, but on page 177, she mentions a Johnny Depp DVD, which is a major can of worms that I'm not going to open at all.
Did they say it was like a new Johnny Depp?
Yeah, or just she wanted to get some Percocet and a Johnny Depp DVD.
What movie was
I was just curious. Well, that's what I was wondering.
Was like the fourth Pirates of the Caribbean movie or something?
Yeah,
probably.
well,
maybe Secret Window.
I was like, okay, he probably wrote this around 2009, somewhere around there. So, Public Enemies had come out. The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. He's in that. He was in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie.
I don't think it's for Tess. I don't think it's for
And
her.
then he hadn't, but the thing was, those movies were out, but they kind of talk about him like he's hunky. It's like, oh, the hunky new Johnny Depp. But he had mostly been in Jack Sparrow mode for these years and Sweeney Todd. So it was just kind of fun. And Charlie.
Maybe she wanted to fire up hairspray or something like that. I'm not hairspray, but Crybaby or something like that.
Well, that's the thing is maybe it was an older Johnny Depp, but it just made me laugh that he was the big hunk.
Yeah, who knew? Who knew?
And Depp had been. It was 5 years earlier, but he was in Secret Window around that time. So I think King maybe had was a little sweet on him because I'm also reading 1122 right now, and there's a similar Johnny Depp, kind of moment. Right? He was on. I mean, he's still. Some people he still is, but I think it was just kind of a little time capsule in its own way.
It was, and that's more why I brought it into Misery, and also, this was obviously written before this whole can of worms was as public as it is.
Actually, this was like the Dark Tower, where the editions that we read were rewritten last couple months.
Oh yeah, and that's all I'll say about that. Do y'all have any Misery?
I don't have anything else. No.
Oh, I got something here. Now, this is a complicated thing. Whenever I read these types of passages, I think, is this something that King would think and say, or is he trying to get into the head of Tess and saying that this is something that she would think and say? And so the quote is, Tess's hostess had this is some language here, by the way, folks. Tess's hostess had pretty clearly been not just a lesbian, but a dyke lesbian. And women of that persuasion were often not fond of men who were non-rapists. So again, is that just a genuine take he might have had 13 years ago, or is that Tess's take? It gets a little complicated, right, when we read these things.
Well, and it's interesting because his daughter is queer,
Yeah, it gets complicated for sure.
Yeah, and I remember at one point I said, like, I wonder if King knows any gay people, and then like, well, no, his daughter, yeah, because that's something we've said about his kind of biases coming out. Is like, well, how many people of color does he know? So I would tend to say maybe that might be more the character, but it does. Yeah, it does.
I just had to point it out. It was definitely like, whoa. And then, but here's another complicated one. I'm not going to say it one way or the other. And if she was a lesbian now, she hadn't always been one. I'm not going to touch that. That's a lot of different interpretations of whether or not that's true or not. Not for me to discuss. And I have a question, Jen. In the grand scheme of things, we haven't really touched on this. Do you think, did Tess discover Ramona's connection too early in the story?
I have thought about that because I remember when I was remembering the story, I thought Roberta died last. And I don't know if I would have. And again, I want to like judge what is there, and I don't want to rewrite the narrative, but I wonder, like, because that seems like the extension of the crime and the support system,
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
Randall made a good point. I think Randall made the point of if Doreen had showed up earlier, it would have made it more of a kind of not fun mystery like we're watching a Hercule Poirot movie, but it would have been a little bit more satisfying having Doreen go on that journey with her, kind of playing detective. I mean, I'm happy that I'm not happy in terms of a storytelling conceit. I'm happy that Ramona ended up having this connection and was dealt with swiftly ultimately. But I kind of went back and forth. It wasn't a deal breaker, but I do wonder if it would have been more of a holy shit in the climax.
Yeah,
as opposed
like
to we
more
know
of a
60
thematic
pages
punch.
out. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
But,
and it does feel like kind of following the breadcrumbs, and that's where it led.
Not true misery, more concernery.
Yeah,
concernery.
That's all I really have. And that,
There's
I had
really
some
not
issues
a lot
again
of
with some of the plotting. That's really it. I didn't have anything specific.
I agree. I didn't really have much either. Well, let's move into what we do like, the word processor of the gods.
And we're gonna make a new rule. Whenever I'm in here, you hear me typing. Whether you don't hear me typing, whether the fuck you hear me doing in here, when I'm in here, that means that I am working. That means don't come in. Now, do you think you can handle that?
Yeah.
Fine. Why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
I have quite a bit, so maybe we can kind of go around or back and forth. I don't know how much you guys have, but
a couple each maybe or something.
Yeah. On page 155, I loved this description of the immediate aftermath, because I think it is something that is really hard to explain when you're talking about PTSD, and like what the experience of that feels like. So it's right after, I'll just read it. Screaming hoarsely, Tess backed out of the culvert and bolted to her feet. Her clothes soaked to her body from the waist up. She was naked from the waist down, and although she did not pass out, at least she didn't think she did, for a little while her consciousness was a queerly broken thing. Looking back on it, she would think of the next hour as a darkened stage lit by occasional spotlights. Every now and then, a battered woman with a broken nose and blood on her thighs would walk into one of these spotlights. Then she would disappear back into the darkness. I just love the way that kind of captures an indescribable kind of feeling, and disassociation.
There's a lot of similar ones to that, Jen. I've got something here again, and this, especially when you read the ending of the book, really packs a punch. I just written it earlier. I marked this earlier on. I don't have the page number, but she was crying again, the tears warm on her chilly face. She felt herself getting ready to step out of the spotlight of awareness once more. She couldn't let that happen. If she allowed herself to go into that waking blackness too many times, she might eventually lose her way back.
Yeah, I almost
ties in
pulled that
nicely
too.
with
Yeah.
I had that one too.
I think it does too, yeah.
The one section I really loved was, and this is just a simple thing, but when she calls the limo service and it's essentially like, it can't be that easy for like just this limo to come and pick me up, this driver to come and pick me up. Like she calls it like an insane mirage, like when it actually pulls up, like, and just the sense of no way am I getting out of this easy.
Yeah.
That to me was extremely powerful.
Yeah.
This could have been the movie Southern Comfort, which actually somebody mentioned in the Discord recently.
Oh, yeah?
Where this awful event happens, but they can't get home. Like the town is almost in on it in a way. The story could have gone that direction, but I do like the subversion of, oh, she can go home now.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily expecting that right away either.
Well, because physically she can go home, but I like kind of the implication that she's not, it can't be that easy to emotionally leave,
Yep.
There's a section that I pulled right around that, which is, I think, a really good explanation of like a trigger, So on page 166, she started to hang up the phone, and then a man, it's him, ran around the corner of the store and right at her. This time there was no chance of screaming. She was paralyzed with terror. It was one of the teenage boys. He went past without looking at her and hooked a left into the men's. And I just really love that it's introduced as not like a teenage boy came around the corner and she thought it was him, because that's not how it feels. It feels like, oh, you're back. It's him. He's always going to be right behind me, you know?
And there are a couple moments of that.
Yeah.
Of her thinking it's him. Yeah.
Like when she thinks he's in the bedroom. I really liked that section too. Another one that I pulled, may be my favorite of the whole thing, on page 167. From somewhere to her left, Tess could hear cars rushing by on I-84, the road she would have taken if she hadn't been so pleased to be offered a shorter way home. Over there on the turnpike, people who had never been raped or stuffed in pipes were going places. Tess thought the sound of their blithe travel was the loneliest she'd ever heard. And I love that. I have often, and this is not necessarily connected to anything specific, but like when I get really frustrated or down on myself, you know, I'll like be sitting in traffic and I just remember seeing this couple walking by and I was like, oh, what would it be like to just have no problems, you know? And I think this is a really kind of beautiful way to describe how lonely it can feel to like be sitting in your misery and watching the rest of the world go on around you, you know?
And even part of that is irrational, right? Because we don't know what that seemingly happy couple has gone through, right? But
exactly.
But you're right. Just the feeling of that.
Right.
I've got this. I thought this was pretty powerful stuff. She'd work on that part later if God meant to grant her later, and it seemed he might, but not on this deserted road where any set of approaching lights might have her rapist behind it. Hers. He was hers now.
Yeah. Very unnerving.
Yeah.
I would say, go ahead, Jen.
I think when I write about movies, like rape revenge movies, I always think, should I say her attack or her rapist or her assault? Like because I don't want to imply that ownership, but I mean that is definitely a consideration, you know? Yeah. And it's like, you're just forever connected to this event, you know?
Yeah. I just want to shout out, I mentioned this earlier, but the fact that Ramona, her house is filled with Hummels and Care Bears is to me just it's a very sly way to get in a little bit of humor in a very dark story. And it's also just a very kind of, I think, twisted and subversive way to depict someone who is, up to as much badness as she's up to.
Yeah. Yeah. I missed the Care Bears. I put the Hummel figurines actually in King's Dominion because I was like, I think Annie Wilkes has some Hummel figurines.
Yes.
I have one more. I noted he's waiting in the bedroom, but that's a little long. And I think I already kind of hit on that with one of the other ones. But on page 216, she says, if you're going to stay, you need to get out of sight, Tom said. And no, that didn't sound like her voice, or not exactly like her voice. Perhaps it was the one that belonged to her deeper self, the survivor, and the killer, her too. How many unsuspected selves could a person have hiding deep inside? She was beginning to think the number might be infinite. And I love that. Yeah. I think we've already kind of talked about this a little bit, but like, I have a couple of different, I think things to say about this is one, I think, when you have been the victim of an assault like this, identifying as a survivor is hard. It takes a while. And I think first you have to kind of identify yourself as a victim too. And then you can, because there's a whole lot of denial you want to, well, this didn't happen. And if I'm a victim, then I have to admit that it did. And I like that she's kind of trying out what survivor might feel like, And also, I'm in internal family systems therapy right now, and a lot of that is like identifying parts of yourself and the pieces of yourself that have been hurt, or the pieces of yourself that can help those pieces. And it's really somatic, and it's really kind of, it feels woo-woo sometimes, but it's really helpful. So, if that's something, I would highly recommend internal family systems therapy for anybody dealing with trauma. Also, I just really like that passage.
I like woo.
Woo.
I think woo is good.
Woo is great. I have recently become a fan of the woo. Woo-saw as well, because Bad Boys 2 is a great movie.
I've never seen it.
That's you're saying Bad Boys 2 is a great movie?
Yes, I love it. Now I'm not. No,
is this gonna be like with Rachel? Rachel and I, it's Meet Joe Black, and with you and I, it's gonna be Bad Boys 2 is good.
You don't like Bad Boys 2?
Oh, one of the hardest
Justin.
outs. One of my least
Oh,
favorite movies.
God.
I saw it in theaters. Absolutely
Dude,
not.
the car
Absolutely
chase
gross.
scene is so
Absolutely gross.
Oh my goodness.
Absolutely gross.
Well, I think you know what we need Randall to decide for us.
Randall?
So you're going to have to watch Bad Boys 2.
Randall lives in
Do
Chicago.
I need to
so-
watch Bad Boys 1 first?
You've never
Well, I
seen Bad Boys?
understand.
I saw it in high school.
Wow, I
don't
can't
remember
believe it.
anything.
How
Well, don't worry
have
about
you not seen Bad Boys?
I know
The bad
it's kind
boy's
of
the
a
resident
huge
bad
blind
boy.
spot for me.
Mm-hmm.
I am the original bad boy.
Yeah.
You
So I think
are.
I was resentful of them coming for my crown.
Could
Well,
could be. That makes
I'll
sense.
say I've got a couple. I got a couple more. There's some really good patches, but I'll now that we're kind of lightening things up a
Yeah,
little
sorry.
bit here.
How many of them are related to Bad Boys 2, though?
Well, they're not related to Bad Boys 2 unless Bad Boys 2 has a cat in it, because there is a funny bit that I found to be genuinely humorous and not even just like an aw shucks way. I laughed, and I'll read it now. She spooned out double rations for Fritzy, but before she let him start eating, she hugged him and kissed the top of his head. The old cat flattened his ears, more in surprise than distaste probably. She was ordinarily a kissy mistress, and hurried his dish as soon as she put him down. Make that last, Tess told him. Patsy will check on you eventually if I don't come back, but it could be a couple of days. She smiled a little and added, I love you, you scruffy old thing. Right, Fritzy said. They got busy eating. I thought right. All right, who gives a shit? Yeah, I just love that interpretation of, we love our cats and cats love us, but, cats are kind of like, get the fuck out of here. I'm trying to,
Oh, yeah.
I thought that
That's
was
huge cat
genuinely,
energy.
I literally lolled. I laughed out loud. Yeah.
I just like Kissy Mistress,
That's also funny. Yeah.
That might be my new nickname.
Just the, right.
Yeah.
We got it. Let me eat. I thought that was really funny.
Well, speaking of eating,
Mm-mm.
let's move into Pound Cake.
After all you've been taught, everyone isn't bad, Mama. Everything isn't a sin.
Come to your closet and pray. Ask to be forgiven.
He's a nice boy, Mom. You like him. You really like him, Mama.
Welcome to Pound Cake. This is when we talk about the kissy mistresses and the cats that just want you to get the fuck out of the way so they can eat. I don't have a ton in Pound
Yeah.
Cake.
Not
This
the
isn't really a
normal-
pound cakey book.
It's
Not the
not.
normal pound cake. Yeah.
I did. The only thing I had was on page 163. I'm not familiar with this song. I don't know if it's a real song, but when she's talking about can your pussy do the dog? No, but a dog did my pussy. And I was like,
I haven't Googled that. My algorithm would be destroyed.
Yeah,
I just
I-
Googled it.
Oh,
It is
Randall's
a real
got it.
song by the Cramps.
Ah,
The
nice.
Cramps. Oh, that checks out.
Yeah, that
The
also
first
that's
lyrics
why I
are,
didn't
"Here,
know
kitty,
it, too.
kitty, you better move along." So speaking
I
of
wonder-
Fritzy,
Speaking of Fritzy. Right.
Nice.
Of course, with pound cake, we don't always just deal with sex. We deal with scatological humor or descriptions. So the
Farts.
only thing I've got is, I did laugh out loud at this as well, maybe unintentionally. Just actually after that guy runs by her. This is the aftermath of that disturbing scene, though. A moment later, she heard the enthusiastic, horse-like sound of a young man voiding an awesomely healthy bladder. I thought there's a lot of good description in there that I found to be horse-like sound. Was
oh
very,
man,
enthusiastic.
I look forward to my horse-like pisses.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
always
yeah.
enthusiastic.
Very satisfying.
I've got an awesomely healthy bladder when I'm letting out my enthusiastic horse-like sounds.
Oh yeah.
That's literally all I've got for pound cake. I'm sorry. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't have anything.
Yeah.
It's not a super heavy pound cake one. Yeah. All right. Well, let's move to the cemetery because I think some of, I don't want to say the pound cake, what maybe in other stories may have felt a little more like pound cake is the cemetery in this one. You know, there's a little more overlap. So let's go into the cemetery.
What's the bottom of the truth?
Well, sometimes that is better. The person you put up there ain't the person that comes back. It may look like that person, but it ain't that person. Because whatever lives in the ground beyond the Pet Sematary ain't human at all.
That's the creaking of the cemetery. I'm sorry, Kyle, if that sounds awful.
We're keeping all this in.
We are keeping it all in. Yeah. Hey, this
New
is
Foley
a peek
work by
behind the
Jenn over there.
I do really like to make sounds. All right. So I have one. I want to give a trigger warning, and there's a reason that I want to read this. And it's on page 149. Yes, this is an upsetting passage, but I think it is an important one. I like that King includes it. It's the reason I like Rape Revenge. We like to pretend that rape doesn't happen. And when we talk about it, we like to use euphemisms. We like to hint at it. We like to call, I even do this. I call it sexual assault instead of rape. And I understand because it is hard and we don't want to trigger survivors. But I also think we do it to keep from upsetting ourselves and to keep living in a world where we can pretend that it's not happening. And I think that the problem with that is that not saying the word and not talking about it creates a sense of shame for survivors. And if survivors feel like this is not something I can talk about in polite society, then that is one step down the road to them thinking about, I can't tell anybody, you know?
You know, I've definitely found myself, even on this episode, saying, you know, like scenario or...
Yeah.
But I think I'm coming from the point, like you said too, Jen, like I just don't want to have that word trigger somebody.
Right,
but I
yeah.
do see normalizing is also important, though. I do get where you're coming from.
Yeah, I think normalizing is what I'm getting at. And it's not that I and it's kind of going back to what I was saying earlier. It's like it's a balance. It's finding the balance of like survivors speaking for themselves, but also us normalizing the language too. So I am going to read it. It's going to be triggering. So if you want to skip ahead, go for it. And I will not think either way about you. Do what you need to do to take care of yourself. Page 149. She came to in a large, shadowy room that smelled of damp wood, ancient coffee, and prehistoric pickles. An old paddle fan hung crookedly from the ceiling just above her. It looked like the broken merry-go-round on that Hitchcock movie, Strangers on a Train. She was on the floor, naked from the waist down, and he was raping her. The rape seemed secondary to the weight. He was also crushing her. She could barely draw a breath. It had to be a dream, but her nose was swollen. A lump that felt the size of a small mountain had grown at the base of her skull, and splinters were digging into her buttocks. You didn't notice those sorts of details in dreams, and you didn't feel actual pain in dreams. You always woke up before the real pain started. This was happening. He was raping her. He had taken her inside the old store, and he was raping her while golden dust motes twirled lazily in the slanting afternoon sun. Somewhere people were listening to music and buying products online and taking naps and talking on phones, but here was a woman being raped, and she was that woman. He had taken her underpants. She could see them frothing from the pocket in the bib of his overalls. That made her think of a Deliverance, which she had watched at a college film retrospective back in the days when she had been slightly more adventurous in her movie-going. Get them panty. I'm gonna stop reading right there. I think that's probably enough. And I, you know, I don't read that to try to trigger people, but I think it is important that we start to normalize and also to build empathy for people who have actually experienced that because, and I, again, don't say this as a kind of gotcha or a cruel thing to say, but like if it feels uncomfortable to hear that or to read it, imagine how it feels to experience it. And I just wish we could feel more comfortable talking about this stuff in the world.
I think it's also just really well written too.
I think so too. You know, the really, details that she's seeing and then like the attempts to disassociate. I had it in
word processor to some degree.
Did you? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think I understood it as Sematary, but the writing is some of the most like evocative and horrific in a very powerful way.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Anybody got anything else?
I'll read. This is just another reminder of how great of a horror writer King can be. Even in this specific story. She opened the door. The hinge screamed almost as loudly as the brakes and then slammed it closed. As she did, she looked through the cab's back window and into the pickup's bed. There were several pieces of wood scattered across the ribbed and rusty metal. They were painted white and had nails sticking out of them. And that is right when we know something's very wrong. And now we're with her and, you know, the inevitable. Just really well. That creeped me out. It's really effective.
Well, right after that, when he says, "How about I fuck you instead?" It's so abrupt and just terrifying.
And so cold.
Yeah. It's certainly up there. And then, and then, I don't know, I thought a lot about, I think he mentioned Leatherface in one of the quotes, and I don't think these characters are Leatherfacian, but there is something Texas Chainsaw-y about the driver a little bit,
Mhm.
especially once we go to his house and every room is like cluttered and filled with, junk and trash. And then he's got the, next to like National Geographic magazines, he's got a bunch of women's underwear it's just terrific. Like the juxtaposition of those things.
And they're both about
Yeah.
families too.
Yeah.
I do like Leatherfacian. I think I'm going to start
Le-
using
le-
that as a
Leatherfacian,
descriptor.
something like that.
Leatherfacian, yeah.
Leatherfacian,
It's like
yeah.
Lovecraftian. I have on page 162, and I read the beginning of this earlier, but it's just it's when she's thinking about what the National Enquirer or Inside View coverage would be. She
Spoiler
says,
alert.
yeah. Sources inside the investigation say they found a pair of the scribe's panties in the accused rapist's drawer, blue Victoria's Secret hip huggers trimmed with lace. And that is my nightmare, is that this tiny detail is going to be leaked to everyone. And I don't know. I'll talk. I wrote about this in more detail. I don't want to get into it right now, but I'll tell you where you can find that. But like we talked about this a lot with the Colorado kid too, is that when you die, you have lost the autonomy over your privacy. And like the color underwear that you are wearing is not something the world deserves to know. And when you become a survivor of these kinds of things or a victim, like those are the kind of details that you can fixate on. And that is like, people don't deserve to know. And that's what makes that invasiveness, I think, really real, is thinking about like telling the world what underwear you're wearing right now,
Yeah.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got another one here too. She turned over on her belly and started to get up on her elbows, meaning to crawl the length of the pipe. Then she saw what was sharing the culvert with her. One of the corpses was not much more than a skeleton, stretching out bony hands as if in supplication. There was still enough hair left on its head to make Tess all but certain it was the corpse of a woman. The other might have been a badly defaced department store mannequin, except for the bulging eyes and protruding tongue. This body was fresh, but the animals had been at it, and even in the dark, Tess could see the grin of the dead woman's teeth. Oof.
Yeah,
Terrifying.
I had that one pulled
I had
too.
that one too.
Incredible.
Oh,
Awful.
yeah. And that's something we haven't really talked about. I don't know how much we actually need to say about it, but like as a thematic element of the story, I like what drives Tess forward is this like protective quality. It's kind of related to what I was just saying. It's like these women have lost their power and she's the only one that knows about it. And I think that is something that really kind of propels her forward.
And like Randall said earlier, King is not afraid to have her be selfish in her own way because she says, what's in it for me, right?
Yeah.
So it plays out really well.
Well, and because the question is, if she doesn't report it, then there is the possibility that they will never be discovered, and her revenge will be entirely for herself and not for these, other, or at least in terms of the families or whatever having closure for these other people and knowing about or having proper burials, things of that nature. That's, I think, where some of the selfishness comes from.
Yeah.
But I think I find that very real and honest and raw.
Yeah, I agree.
The question is like, is it okay for me to be selfish about wanting this thing? And is that actually selfish, or is it just wanting, like, is that just me wanting to reclaim something that was taken from me,
Sure.
And that's why I think this collection pairing that with A Good Marriage, because I think it's another kind of like exploration of what justice looks like and what you owe to other people from kind of two different sides of the story.
Yeah.
I also have Betsy's story. I don't really want to read it because it's pretty horrific, but it's really awful and terrifying.
Yeah.
Last couple pages of the story, if you want to revisit it out there, listen.
Yeah. And it's so matter of fact too. Like she's just kind of sitting and talking about it. And just like, I don't know, she takes her eye out and I had forgotten that happened, but that's such like a brutal way of showing the effects of this thing, that could that could feel like a story, but she's got like, well, my eye, Anything else?
Just the classic King ending of a chapter. She says, "Hello?" Her voice echoed. "I'm right here," a voice replied softly from behind her. And it turns out it's just somebody else. That's how one of the chapters ends. I thought, a little classic King creeping its way in there.
I thought you were going to say, and nobody in the free zone ever saw Tom again.
Oh, no. Yeah. And that was the last time the four of them were together. No,
right.
That's all I've got for Cemetery. I mean, it's an intense book. We listed a lot of other stuff, I think, too.
It really is, yeah. I think maybe just the story could be Cemetery.
Yes, that is it's a breathing cemetery. Big Driver
it really is, yeah. Well, let's move into maybe a more comforting room, I guess, depending on what version of the Overlook you're in. Let's move into King's Domain / Room 237.
There's another world out there.
I know there is.
All right, this is where we talk about all the 19s we can find. We've already mentioned Inside View. I mentioned Rest Stop. I feel like there's like thematic ties. We mentioned Richard Widmark, which is in The Green Mile, and I said Hummel figurines. The only other one I had was on page 209 when she talks about pulling the trigger and it ends on an empty cylinder because she was taught to not put the bullet in the first chamber, which reminds me of a very recent development in King's Dominion that I don't want to spoil because it's a very new book. You know what I'm talking about?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. If you
No spoilers.
Yeah,
I've got a few.
Okay.
I got a few. But Randall, you go ahead.
Willow Grove Goes to Terre Haute is the name of one of the books. Terre Haute is famously where Trash K-Man is from, and also the town nearest to where my wife's small town is, so I go there often.
Oh, wow.
It's so funny because the way my wife talks about it and the way that I've experienced it to some degree, it reminds me of how King talks about Derry, where you're kind of like, there is something dark here. You know what I mean? So I can understand. And there's been a lot of mass murders and like I believe it's where Timothy McVeigh was executed, was in Terre Haute. And then Charles Manson was there for a while. Like there's a lot of darkness that's gone through that town.
Well, I'm glad you get to go there so often.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then I think it's the Big Driver says Happy Crappy, right?
I believe you are right.
Which is
say
the
Happy
King's
Crappy.
I don't have that
the
listed,
kid's
but
favorite.
Yeah.
The kid's favorite phrase.
My favorite
And I've got
character
a
in
few
the
others, but I'll throw it over to you.
Well, Randall, right after that Terre Haute comment, she says, the Willow Grove Knitting Society visits the International Space Station.
Oh,
Gwendy's
like
Final
Gwendy.
Task.
Gwendy's Final Task. That's one.
She does strike me as a knitter, you know.
Yeah.
Did we say that she lives at 19 Primrose Lane? Yeah.
19 Primrose Lane.
19
Primrose felt like
Red.
Yeah, I was gonna say
towery.
Primrose felt like a King thing, but when I googled it, I didn't get anything. I think I was just thinking of like Dark Tower and then Rose Manor and stuff like that. And then
okay, good.
Yeah. Oh, and the Prim, obviously from Dark Tower. So I think that's what I was thinking of.
That makes sense.
And then what else do I have? On page, like when she talks about going, like people asking her, where do you get your ideas? At these Q&As, that's a little Room 237, just because King always talks about, people asking him that and how much he hates that question. So
I think
what else do you have, Justin?
We touched a little bit upon how there's kind of a detective aspect of the story, which reminded us of Holly a little bit with the Doreen character.
Yeah.
Here's a good one, I thought. Here's a quote. To some of them, she wouldn't be just another woman with a bruised face that practically screamed beating. She would be Stoke Village's resident novelist. You know the one. They made a TV movie about her old lady detectives a year or two ago. It was on Lifetime Channel, and my God, you should have seen her. Well, guess what? This novella, Big Driver, was later adapted into a Lifetime Channel movie.
Oh, yeah.
It sure was.
Good
How about
call.
that?
Yeah.
I've got some more.
I've got
Go for
one
it.
more.
Yeah,
Okay,
go for it.
Randall. Yeah.
She sinks her fingernails into her palms while gripping her fists in a way that King characters often do.
I think about you when I read that now.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I know. I love to call it out.
Randall Dominion.
Yeah.
But it's in there as much as Blue. I would say that it rivals Blue Chambray and Adam's apples that bob like a monkey on a stick for King's repeated phrases.
People falling down laughing at unfunny jokes.
People crying because somebody said,
laughing.
"Why did the chicken cross?"
To be fair, I also laughed when I mistook John Travolta bringing home a dog at the end of Face Off and not the son.
Shows what you think of children.
I know. Oh my Lord. I love kids. I love dogs too. So make what you will. Okay, here's some good ones. Here you ready for this? This is
Let's
some
go.
good shit. Here we go. This
Is
is
it
not
room
room
237?
237. This is not room
Okay.
237. This
Oh,
has got to be.
shit.
This has got to be real. This has got to be specific. How did Tess find out where Ramona lived? Do either two of you remember?
Google?
Google.com? No. She looked through the town's tax records and she discovered Ramona's info, including the fact that, quote, she had paid $913.06 in property taxes the year before. Add up those numbers.
Oh,
19.
No
man.
way.
I didn't even
9306.
think about that. Just
Here's
whenever you
some-
see numbers, you do that. Don't you?
I wonder if he just
usually
passes
pans
it
out.
to his accountant and is like, hey,
He's
make
like-
these 19.
Yeah. I can't add. What is this, 19?
Right, exactly. Just-
Now, here's a
just
couple
fix
interesting things that I found for the context of what we're the Full Dark No Stars. One is she refers to the quote unquote courageous woman inside of her just before she kills Big Driver, the wrong brother. Much like Wilf in 1922 refers to the conniving man
them.
inside of him, whom
Interesting.
he blames for the evil in that story.
That is
And this was interesting. I thought this might be a good marriage foreshadowing. This is when Tess is talking to Tom at a certain point. What if he's married, Tess? Tom asked. What if he's got a wife waiting for him? The idea startled her for a moment. Then she smiled. And not just because the only ring he'd been wearing was the one too big to be a ruby. Quote, then Tess says, guys like him don't have wives. Not ones that stick around anyway. There was only one woman in Al's life and she's dead. Well, we'll have to read A Good Marriage. I thought that has to be specific. He had been thinking about that.
Yeah.
Thought that
Yeah.
was,
Or at least in the edit, you know.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
thought that was, and that's all I got. But I thought there's some pretty fun little ones there. There you go.
Nice.
How fun!
I know. I mean, you know, it's more fun than some of the other sections.
It's good that we did this before the cemetery section. You know what I mean? Or yeah.
That's true. Yeah. I don't know. I did talk about Bad Boys too, and some.
Well, we don't
heavy
need. We
sections.
can listen, Kyle. We can have Kyle edit that out if you're not comfortable.
No,
with
we
that.
gotta
Oh
leave the
no,
Bad
I'm
Boys
fine.
2
Hey,
talking.
I stand by my Bad
Hey,
Boys.
I'm
2
looking out
love.
for you. all
I
right?
know
I'm
it
just
is
looking out for you.
problematic, but you know, each
I'm not even saying it's problematic. It's just bad.
just bad. Come on. All right. Well, let's move into our final thoughts: MVP and nose ranking.
Dad, can we go now?
You ready?
Yeah, we've been ready for an hour.
Okay, I'll be right there.
You said that a half hour ago. Yeah, my dad's weird. He gets like that when he's writing.
Randall. How many?
I'm going to give it 3.5 bright red Pennywise clown noses. I actually think this story reads really breezy despite the really heavy source, material that's going on here. I think Tess is a really interesting character and well written and someone I like spending time with. And, I think I've talked a lot about the thematic complexity that King is toying with here. I'm kind of two minds about it, like I said, because I do think King is trying to have his cake and eat it too. But I think he also, in doing so, and the way he approaches it, actually does create this alternate reality that is in its own way subversive and in the rape revenge genre. And so I think that there's more to it than a traditional rape revenge story. And I also like that he doesn't give us that like really, really dark ending either, because I think that would have been unsatisfying. I think that there is almost something... I think the only really truly satisfying end to a rape revenge story is the catharsis that comes from the murder of everyone. And I think in his attempts to add in that moral complexity, it does take a little of the steam out of it, right? Like it does take a little bit of the wallop out at the same time. But I think what's lost in that is made up for me at least, in the in sort of what it proposes and this notion of a rape revenge story that engages with the moral aspect but still has that quote unquote happy ending. I find that interesting. So I'm going to give it 3.5 bright red Pennywise clown noses. Is my MVP. I'm going to say Tess, but coming up close behind her is that good cat Fritzy, and then following close behind him is the dog whose name I don't remember.
Ah, yes.
But maybe she, like I said, she brought that dog home.
Yeah.
And the dog and Fritzy were fast friends.
Like the dog in Face Off.
Like the dog in Face Off. Yes, exactly.
Happy home.
How about you, Justin?
Well, like I said, the somewhat frustrating finale doesn't offset a good majority of this one for me. I actually enjoyed this more on reread.
Yeah.
In some ways, like I enjoyed 1922 more on its reread. I don't think it's as good as 1922, but I would agree with Randall. I'm going to give this 3.5 bright red Pennywise clown noses. I think that the character of Tess, I think the most important thing about this character when it comes to a story is that I believe this character could be real, and what she goes through is real. And most importantly, I do find her to be a compelling character. So, yeah, 3.5 bright red Pennywise. It's impossible. 3.5 bright red Pennywise clown noses.
It's tricky
my
words,
lord.
Yeah. Hey, if we can say verisimilitude and
what the hell I say
verisimilitude,
no problem. I gotta find that screenshot of Christopher Reeve and the verisimilitude.
Did you give who was your MVP?
Oh, Tess.
Tess, yeah, it's kind of hard to.
Sorry to Fritz, the driver, the dog. Great bits. Fritz
exactly.
The cat.
Who else are you gonna say? Yeah.
Great bits from Fritzy, but no.
I really like that limo driver.
Manuel. We forgot to talk about Manuel.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I mean, justice for the men in this story, right? We got.
That's what I was saying. That's why it's 3.5, not 4. I mean,
right? Exactly. Yeah.
Oh no.
Justin, he kids. I'm at war with myself about what to give this because I don't tend to go in comparing to other things that I've ranked. I don't think I gave this one and I don't think this is better than that.
Yeah, I don't do that either.
My heart, because it's just there's too many to keep track of. But I really want to give this 5. I think
Do it. Hey, we ain't stopping you.
I think I say that mostly from an emotional place. I think I agree with what we've talked a lot about maybe the narrative elements or some things that don't necessarily work. But I also I really like ending on this upbeat note. I think that is kind of the experience of reading this. That's what I wanted to end on. And I also really love that King wrote this. I think a lot of male writers wouldn't venture into this territory, especially now. And not saying that, more male writers write female stories. That's not necessarily what the world needs, but I am glad that he wasn't afraid to write this story, and I think that he has written some passages very, very well. I don't want this topic to be something that only women can talk about, because I think when only women talk about it, the kind of men who need to hear it are often the kind of men who don't listen to women when they talk. So, I think, I'm going to give it 5. I think I just really am glad that it exists.
Do it.
When it started coming up on the schedule, I was expecting it to be problematic. And I think it is.
So was I.
It held up really well. I mean, there are a couple of things that we mentioned that I think, in Misery, but other than that, I think it holds up really well and it tells an important story very well. And it doesn't overstay its welcome, It doesn't really overcomplicate while still adding the complexity that I think I find really interesting. My MVP is Tess, of course, although I do want to give a shout out to Fritzy.
Right.
Yeah.
Great quote of the book.
I'm nothing if not a kissy mistress, So
yeah.
I said I was going to tell you where you can find more of my thoughts on this. I wrote about the autopsy of Jane Doe for Ghouls Magazine. I wrote about Lovecraft Country for Consequence. I wrote about Irreversible for Dread Central. And I wrote about Me Too and horror in general at my blog at Strong Female Antagonist. So if you want more of what I've kind of alluded to here, check those out. I'm not going to link them, but you can find them. And that's it for our episode on Big Driver. Thank you, listeners, for hanging in there with us. I know it was a dark road, but not to be punny, but the more we drive it, the lighter it gets. Huge thank you to both of you, Randall and Justin, for joining me in this one. I know it was not an easy conversation, but I really appreciate you talking about this story.
Hey, thanks to you for leading.
Yes, absolutely.
And before we go, let's wrap up with a little bit of plugs. So, Justin, what's going on with Halloweenies?
Well, we're also covering some very emotionally complex material this month for September, or as as we are calling it, and as certain film studios are calling it, Soptember or Sockstember. It is, of course, we're pumped for the upcoming release of Saw X, aka Socks.
Oh yeah,
We
love
have
that moral complexity there.
You know? I mean, honestly, there is some moral complexity when you
There
really think
really
of it. I
is,
was joking, but actually, there is some moral complexity for Socks.
Mm-hmm.
But we've released our Patreon episode for Saw into the public, and we just wrapped up a recording for Saw 2, in which Randall joined us on, our Saw boy, resident Saw boy. We've also got our episode on Cult of Chucky, the 7th film in the Child's Play series. And we did a commentary for the 25th anniversary of the X-Files Fight the Future film, also celebrating the 30th anniversary of that series. And I'm not done. There's even more. We did 10 scariest cults in movies, and that episode just came out as well. So if you want to hear our commentary and our episode on Saw 2, please check out patreon.com/HalloweeniesPod.
Nice.
Thank you. I did all that without writing it down. I can't believe
awesome.
I remembered all that. Usually I forget 3 of the episodes because it's all a blur at a certain point, but there you go.
Exactly, yeah. Well, and speaking of, it's all a blur and there are a lot of episodes. Randall, what can we expect in the Barrens and the main feed as we kind of wrap up September and head into Halloween?
Scary season coming up.
Yeah.
By the time this is dropped, your Character Corner episode, Patreon exclusive on Holly Gibney, should be available. So we do have that. And then in October, we've got Pet Sematary Bloodlines coming out on Paramount Plus, and we're going to have an interview with the director, Lindsay Beer, as well as our own review of the movie. We're also going to be doing for our patrons a Pet Sematary 2019 watch along and commentary. So if you are part of our Patreon community, you can join us for a watch along at the Discord. It should be pretty self-explanatory for how to get on the Discord, but if you don't know, just send a message through Patreon and we can help you out. We're going to be interviewing Sadie Hartman, who has written a book called 101 Horror Books to Read Before You're Murdered. I'm sure there's some King ones in there. And then we're going to be wrapping up our Full Dark No Stars coverage. And we're going to have a few other episodes that we're still finalizing, but stay tuned. It's all going to be some fun stuff.
You know what?
And then, if you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/thebarons. We got so much good stuff for you there, like literally hundreds of hours of content. So,
I read what the 101 books are, and I've only read one of them.
Really?
Sounds like a you
and
problem.
What's even worse is that I anticipate getting murdered pretty soon, so I've got to read these other 100 books pretty quick.
Well, I'm going to murder you for only reading one of them.
Well, Jen's going to murder me for not liking Bad Boys too, so I guess
that's true. Yeah, so we're going to fight
each
each other. Maybe we'll team
Book
up.
one.
Maybe we'll compete to see who can murder Justin first.
Oh my
Only
God.
time will tell. I mean, it's spooky season. What
it is?
What are we supposed to do? Campfight City Hall.
Well, it's almost spooky season. I think we're almost a couple weeks away, of course.
Yeah,
My
Mayor of
famous stance.
Spooky Time says it's not spooky season yet.
The big Jim Rennie of it's not spooky season yet.
It's only spooky season when Justin says so.
Yes,
That's
September.
rude.
I will allow, as I've said many times, I will allow September 23rd. But obviously it's special when it starts on October 1st. But I will allow September 23rd for it to be spooky season.
Allow it.
That's Corey's birthday, actually. So yeah.
Happy birthday, Corey.
I wish Corey a happy spooky season and a very happy birthday.
And Justin, that's why you're actually going to get murdered, is trying to police people's spookiness.
Well, I am all about policing.
I have heard that about you. Yeah.
Get this man some mirrored sunglasses.
Oh man, desperation over here. Collie Gerber.
Oh my God. Well, listeners, we're going to get out of here before we just drive right off that Life is a Highway. And we're going to be riding it all night long, but you go to bed. So we will be joining us. Thanks for joining. Words. I don't know. We'll be seeing you over long days and pleasant nights.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. But you want somebody to treat you kind.
This is the end of our show. For now. Tune in next week. If you like our programming, consider searching for other bloody disgusting podcasts, such as Creepy, Horror Queers, The Boo Crew, SCP Archives, Nightlight, Margaret's Garden, and more.